Rockfin.
I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to Sabby's podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you're new, I want to let you know that Sabby's podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show. And you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and every other Sunday. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And welcome back, guys. We're going to kick things off with our special guest. Really quick, I do want to show you what we're going to discuss tonight. It is going to be very interesting, folks. The theme tonight is what matters most. And that's what I want you to have in your mind when we discuss these stories. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are discussing Shannon Sharpe. $50 million lawsuit. This is the big story of the week. Very controversial here. I do have updated information about that. We're going to get into those accusations against Shannon Sharpe. We're also going to discuss Pete Hegseth possible exit. What is happening with the Trump administration? It appears they may be looking elsewhere. What did Pete do? We'll get into all of that. We're also going to discuss, if you have not heard by now, on Easter Monday, Pope Francis died. We're going to discuss how significant he was, especially when it comes to foreign policy and Gaza, a very, very different type of pope. We're going to get into all of that. We're going to discuss a deep dive tonight of Judy Garland and the Hollywood abuse. We're going to get into that as well. Of course, Margaret Kimberly is our special guest. She is here. And we're also going to break down that Trump-Iran deal. What is going on there, folks? So without further ado, I do want to go ahead and bring our special guest in. You've seen her here before, journalist Margaret Kimberly. She also writes for the Black Agenda Report. What's going on, Margaret?
Hey, how are you? Good to be back.
I'm doing great. So good to see you. I know you're so busy, so thank you for making the time.
Oh, thank you for having me back. It's always great to be with you.
So a number of people have been asking me to discuss what is happening in Ecuador with those elections. I do want to go ahead and bring up this article here. Ecuador warns of potential assassination attempt against President Noboa, but provides no evidence. This is really crazy, folks. I just want to read this part here. It says that Ecuadorian authorities warned Saturday that the Andean country is on high alert after it received intelligence about a suspected attempt on President Daniel Noboa's life. Margaret, please explain to us what on earth is happening in Ecuador. Why are they after him?
I'll start a little with talking about Ecuador itself and the recent history in that country. It's a South American country, small country on the Pacific coast between Colombia to the north, and I believe Peru to the south. Ecuador means equator in Spanish. Just thought I'd throw that in, hence the name of the country. Ecuador, let's start with the last 20 years or so. In the early O's, it was called the pink tide, where leftish presidents were being elected. And one of those was a man named Rafael Correa. And he was president for about 10 years. I believe he left office nearly 10 years ago. Correa was more progressive, not a complete socialist or radical, but he was what the people wanted. Now, Correa was undermined as any left, even a little bit left-wing leader in this hemisphere will be. The U.S. still treats every country in the hemisphere and the Caribbean or Central or South America as its quote-unquote backyard, and does so quite openly. Now, there was an extra issue with Correa, and that is Julian Assange, who had been given asylum in Ecuador's embassy in London. An embassy is, in fact, the territory of that country. So in this case, Ecuador's embassy was Ecuador in the United Kingdom. Ecuador gave Assange asylum. The first Trump administration obviously wanted to get their hands on Assange. They had to undermine the Ecuadorian government to get someone new who would give up Assange. And that is what happened. Now, since that time, Daniel Noboa is now president with the support of the U.S. Ecuador now, unfortunately, everything Correa did is gone. It has become a narco state, drug trafficking. Actually, some Europeans, very strange, European drug traffickers are operating in Ecuador. So Noboa was recently reelected, although that's been disputed by the leading opposition candidate. So Ecuador is a country that is now poorer. The people, it's become very violent because the military and the police control the country. And the way you make sure that someone like Correa doesn't come back is that you repress the population. We've had a number of articles in Black Agenda Report about this history. I have a great contributor, Claudia O'Brien Moscoso, who has been there and spoken to people there. Last week, I interviewed Ajamu Baraka. He led a delegation to Ecuador, and it turned out to be more dangerous, actually. The government closed off the country to make sure there could not be election observers. This small delegation had just arrived. They closed off the borders. There was a lot of police intimidation at the polling places, and I urge people to go to our website, Black Agenda, to hear that interview, also on SoundCloud, where Ajamu Baraka describes their experiences there. So there are two other things that have happened. People don't think of countries like Ecuador as having a Black population, but it does. I mean, that's another issue, the fact that I don't think there's any country in this hemisphere that did not have slavery, and that does not, obviously, populations bigger and smaller since that time. But the Black population, the poorer working class population, the Black population, the indigenous population are very much repressed. And in December, 4 kids, Black kids between 12 and 16 were kidnapped by the military and killed.
What?
Yes. In Guayaquil is the city, Guayaquil 4, they are known as. And a terrible story. But it is it's one that got into the news, but it is an example of how Ecuador treats its Black citizens. In addition, there has been a terrible oil spill. Ecuador is an oil producing country. There's been a terrible oil spill in the Esmeralda region, which is where a lot of the Black population live. This oil spill has destroyed a river where people fished, washed, bathed. Drinking water has all been destroyed by this oil spill, and the government has not been responsive. So people have been displaced. They've had to leave their homes. But Ecuador is firmly under U.S. influence. Eric Prince, famously of Blackwater fame, visited shortly before the election. What a coincidence. So that's what's going on in Ecuador now. It's a sad but common story of countries in this hemisphere where people struggle to be truly independent and to be sovereign and independent of U.S. intervention.
So the U.S. government wants Noboa in office there. Absolutely.
Yes. He's their guy.
Yeah, I was very shocked because I saw your post on Twitter about the Afro-Ecuadorian population. I was one of those people that was really shocked. I did not know there were Afro-Ecuadorian people. So I was surprised by that. But when you say that people have been displaced, where have they been? Where are they moving to?
They're just anywhere they can, but they can't live in their homes because their lives depended on this river, which has now been contaminated by this oil spill. So they haven't gotten very far, but they can't live where they've had to leave their homes and are now scrambling to find other places to live in this country that is repressive, that does not look out for their interests, which looks out for the interests of the government oil company, but not their own. So you have a narco state under the control of the U.S., environmental degradation, racism, repression of leftists or anyone who opposes the president, President Noboa.
Why? So I guess I'm trying to figure out, Ecuador is small, to your point. What would the U.S. want with Ecuador? Why do they have interest in that particular country?
Well, it's very funny. The U.S. can decide that a certain place is within its strategic interests, or all these phrases that they use. It's on the Pacific. So that means there's a potential for China to have influence. Just to talk about another country in the region, Panama, it seems strange that Trump was on this, doing his usual routine about we're going to take Panama back and blah, blah, blah. It's because a Hong Kong company is assisting them in rebuilding the Panama Canal. And China is, so much of what Trump does in foreign policy is tied to China and trying to prevent any influence from China around the world, even if countries want it, as they wanted in Panama. So especially countries on the Pacific coast of South America, the U.S. wants to keep in their orbit and prevent those countries from possibly having any relationships, any trade with China. And sometimes it's control just for the sake of control. They had, as I said, a progressive president. The United States does not want that. That's the last thing they want, is for people to be able to elect someone who even talks about meeting their needs. So this little country far away can fall under U.S. attention, become a target of the U.S. And the end result is an old story of the U.S. backing dictatorships, backing repressive governments in order to make sure it can keep those nations under control and keep those nations from forming relationships with anyone else.
You said that the U.S. doesn't want a progressive, the last thing they want is a progressive president in some of these other countries. That points to something that I think we've been saying for years. The U.S. U.S. government doesn't even want a progressive president here.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
you took the words out of my mouth. I mean, it's like somebody like Bernie Sanders, a liberalish reformer, they went through great lengths twice to make sure he could not get the the Democrats' nomination. So yes, absolutely. It's what the U.S. does here. It's what it does all over the world.
So it's just, and that brings me to another question, Margaret. Right now, there's a lot of energy or somewhat energy around what Bernie and AOC are doing with these oligarchy tour rallies, and people are asking for AOC to run 2028. And I've been calling this AOC's presidential tour because that's what it seems like happening here. What do you say to people who say, well, she could win? Because I keep telling people she has to get the nomination, and they're not going to let her get to the point that you just made, that we just talked about. The U.S. government does not want that to happen. I mean, you would think that what happened to Bernie twice would be a lesson for a lot of people, but I do see people, it's like they have the doughy eyes again. They're like, oh, wow, look at the crowds, look at all the people, look at this. And they're like, yeah, we've been through this before twice. And it's not about the crowds. Like, that's the thing. Like, there could be millions of people out there. At the end of the day, to me, it doesn't matter, because the DNC, they're the ones that decide who the nominee is going to be.
Yeah, it's I also see this as an AOC audition. You have to remember too, she's very young. I don't think she'll be old enough to run for president for another year or two. I believe the president has to be 35 or early 30s. So it could be for 2028. It could be for another election cycle. But my biggest issue with this oligarchy tour, the idea that Bernie Sanders is fighting oligarchy. Bernie, my late colleague, may he rest in peace, Bruce Dixon, coined the term sheepdog for Bernie Sanders back in 2015 when he first announced that he was going to challenge Hillary Clinton for the Democrats' nomination. He said Bernie's role is to sheepdog leftish Democrats back into the party. He won't get the nomination, but he'll endorse Hillary anyway, and he'll try to get people to go with him, which is exactly what happened. And Bernie talks a good game. He's a big talker when Democrats are out. So now Trump is in with majorities in both houses of Congress. So Bernie talks a good game about fighting oligarchy. But what did he do when Biden was in? What did he do? He gave Biden cover. So with Trump in, with no chance for it being passed, he sponsors a resolution to raise the minimum wage. Well, it's not going to happen. Did he do that when Biden was in office? No, he gave Biden cover. And so did AOC. Do you remember her saying he exceeded expectations? Do you remember that? But I also remember she couldn't really look straight into the camera. She kind of like touched her face or looked away. So I don't know. Look, perhaps I'm reading too much into it, but she knew it was BS when she was saying it. But that's the role they play in herding people back into the Democratic Party and keeping them there. So she endorsed Biden. He endorsed Biden. it's the same old. We've seen this movie. We know how it ends. Now there could be. She's pretty shrewd. She might be able to get the party behind her. I don't know, for 2028 or later. But people shouldn't have any illusions about her. Her campaign would be more like an Obama campaign, where someone pretends to be progressive when they aren't really. And if they decide, if the oligarch, that's the other thing. The Democrats have an oligarchy too. They raised $1 billion for Kamala Harris. So this idea that only the Republicans have oligarchs is pretty funny to me. But anyway, they may decide to go with her as they did with Obama in 2008. So it's a possibility, but no one should be excited. And I hate to, part of me, I hate to rain on people's parades. I know so many people, they're so happy. Look at all these people. Bernie's fighting back. AOC's fighting. They're not fighting back, whatever else they're doing. Taking a private jet to, red states. They were in Idaho, I think it was, okay, so what? But it's not something different. They may be able to energize enough people to, I think Trump is the one energizing Democrats right now more than they are. But, from Democrats, we have a lot of phoniness. Cory Booker talking for 25 hours and AOC and Sanders giving speeches to big crowds. But it's not significant. It's not really moving the needle at all. And how hard is it to make the case for Democrats when Trump is in office? So I find it all very underwhelming, all that to say.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you. It's interesting to me, too, because I was talking to a friend of mine who had no idea any of this is going on. And when I say, sometimes people will hear me say Twitter is not like real life, or X is not like real life. This is what I'm talking about. Only 42% of the world's population is on Twitter. And I don't know if everybody realizes that, but not even the majority, not even half. Right. So when I talk to friends of mine who are not involved in this at all, and there are people that only tend to tune in when it's the presidential election season, they didn't know about this oligarchy tour. They don't know about any of this stuff, any of it. They're just like, what? No, I didn't know about this. No. Oh, okay. All right, yeah, whatever.
It is interesting. I mean, those of us who follow the news, we love following the news. We have to follow the news to do our work. And so we do. And, I fall into this rabbit hole of social media, especially, even X, then I still say Twitter sometimes too. People said they were going to leave because of Elon Musk, and it's still where you get the bang for your buck. It's still where most people give their attention, who pay close attention to the news. So it's very important you get a sense of what is happening. But you're absolutely right. There are many people who have no idea what is going on. They hear about Trump a lot, but they don't know much else. And that's why it's easy for so many people to be fooled, to have somebody present Kamala Harris, the word salad lady. They're going to shoehorn her in at the last minute and she can win. I don't know why people thought that, but they did. Or people who said I didn't notice that Biden appeared to be in decline. That's because they weren't paying attention. I don't know how you could not have seen that. So you're right. It's true. We are talking to a significant minority, but a minority of people. That's true.
And that brings me to the books that are being published right now. There was a book that just came out by 3 authors, I believe. They've been doing a podcast tour talking about what happened behind the scenes after Kamala was anointed, how Obama didn't want her to be the nominee, et cetera. Jake Tapper has a book that's coming out about Joe Biden refusing to leave the race sooner and what a problem he was. What do you make of all of this?
I feel like these insiders knew this all along, and they wait until after the fact to tell us. I sort of figured out there had to be some infighting among Democrats because there were people publicly saying Biden shouldn't run. I remember the previous November, about a year before Election Day, David Axelrod, who was an Obama insider, questioning whether Biden should run, pointing out that his approval ratings were low. saying he could serve his country better by stepping aside, even though it was late in the game. So that told me there was some talk going on. It's not clear to me, though, that anybody spoke directly to Biden. Nobody wanted to tell Grandpa to give up the keys. But this goes back to 2020, when they rigged it for Biden, when I think they got lucky, even though he won. But I could tell he wasn't healthy. I looked at him and said, he isn't well. And then what did they do? They made up this story about a stutter. Now, Biden had been around forever, and I had no recollection of him having a stutter. All of a sudden, we heard about Biden's stutter, and I'm like, no, he's an older man, and he looks like it. But they rigged it for him. They lied about his health for 4 years. Then he face plants in that debate, and then they panic. Then the Democrats oligarchs say, we're not giving money unless you get rid of him. And Nancy Pelosi and Obama were taking the lead and trying to get him out and get someone else in, to have an open convention, to have some kind of a process to give the impression that whoever was going to replace him had the support of Democrats. But Biden endorsed her. Obama did not want him to endorse her. That messed up his plan for an open convention. And I don't know if you remember, it took him a couple of days to endorse her. One of those, the books you're talking about, they say that Congressman James Clyburn played a role. He wanted Kamala Harris. So he told Biden to endorse her. I think that's funny because Clyburn is made out to be some kind of kingmaker, which I don't think he is actually. He's a Democratic Party insider. But, and there were people, Black people, saying that he had to pick Kamala. Black people would be mad if he didn't. I never believed that, though. I never felt like people had that strong a feeling for her. But what, Clyburn and others thought so, and they told Biden he should endorse her. Now, Biden is also very angry about being pushed out. So, did he do it on purpose to undermine her and to stick a finger in the eye of the people who'd told him he had to stand down? I don't know. So, I mean, the books, it's interesting that people are talking about this, but I hope rank and file Democrats learn a lesson from all of this, from about these people, the oligarchs and their, errand boys and girls who determine who our presidents are going to be, about following these people. They don't know what they're doing, or they know but their interests are not ours. I guess I should put it that way. Their interests aren't ours. They've got to get someone who the money people will want. Is that somebody who's good for us? Probably not, because the money people want that person. So we get people who are antithetical to what we need. And, you can have a real disaster, or they can raise $1 billion, but, you can't, I don't want to call Kamala Harris a pig, but it is an expression everybody knows. You can't put lipstick on the pig. And trying to put this this oddly inarticulate person who's now a white man could get away with it. George W. Bush could say and not be able to form a complete sentence and still become the president. But that wasn't going to happen for her. No recognition, no acknowledgement of the role that the genocide in Gaza was playing and making so many people angry, making people saying, I believe rightly, that they weren't going to vote for genocide. The bumbling that got Kamala Harris chosen in the first place, the fact that they didn't, that they were going to go along with Biden and then decide to dump him, and then they anoint someone that, most people did not really have any excitement about. And so she loses. I mean, 6 million people, I believe that's the number of people who voted for Biden in 2020 who would not vote for her.
And I tried to warn people too, because I was talking to people on the ground, and most people I talked to said they're not coming out to support anybody, that they were staying home. The exact opposite of what I heard in 2020. Exact opposite.
Because the cynicism of rigging it for Biden, pushing him forward, letting him hang around, not giving the people a choice. Then you choose her, somebody with a lot of weaknesses. And it was an inevitable result. So, and then we end up with Trump again. Now, here's the irony. Who really had a primary? The Republicans. Trump was clearly the choice of Republican voters.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Like, we can't say that he was just anointed. They had a full primary. They had debates.
Yep.
And everything. Like, it's just, I don't know. But that brings me also to this about Donald Trump. This is another one that people have been paying very close attention to, what's happening with Iran. It says that Israel moles strike on Iran despite Trump's caution. Now, Trump was talking a big game about if Iran didn't agree to, the deal that he wanted to offer, that war would not be off the table, that a strike against them would not be off the table. But he then started to backtrack. Like this says here, Israel is considering a limited strike on Iran's nuclear facilities in the coming months, despite Trump's rejection of large-scale military action at the moment. Another round of U.S.-Iran nuclear talks were held in Rome on Saturday. First and foremost, Margaret, why do you think he started to pull back from this? Because remember, he was saying that if Iran doesn't accept the deal, then no, a strike is not off the table. Why do you think he pulled back from it? And what do you think is going to happen now? Because Israel's just like, yeah, we don't care what you say. We're going to strike them anyway.
Yeah, it's so unclear. This has been a pantomime between Israel and various American presidents. Israel's been saying openly for years, they want the U.S. to attack Iran because they can't do it by themselves. They have to have U.S. assistance in order to pull it off. So they've been saying we want somebody to attack Iran. There were times Obama said it's not off the table, Iran can't have nukes, blah, blah. But Obama did take it off the table with the so-called Iran deal. Yep. In which Iran, in exchange for getting sanctions relief, said they would not pursue a nuclear weapons program. And I rarely give Obama credit for anything, but I actually think, well, Israel has nukes. What's wrong with Iran having nukes? But at any rate, it was a good, it made sense for the people of Iran not to be punished because the U.S. hates their government, that the U.S. was in effect saying we're not attacking Iran. That's off the table now. So that was a good thing. Trump comes in and gets rid of it. And then Biden comes in and sticks with Trump instead of going back to Obama. All Biden had to do was support what had happened when he was Obama's vice president and go back to that deal. So Biden goes along with Trump. Trump comes back in. Israel is talking about greater Israel. They can't just kill people in Gaza. They can kill people in Lebanon. They can kill people in Syria. And yes, we're going to attack Iran also. Now, the first time Trump was in office, there were efforts to get him to attack Iran, and he would not. He did assassinate the Iranian general Soleimani around New Year's Day in 2020. And all the Democrats running for president said it was a good thing, by the way. I think it's good to point that out. But as far as having an actual war with Iran, he always said no. So there are competing factions in his administration. Apparently, Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense for now, as of today, at this time, who knows how long he'll be, apparently is opposed to attacking Iran. And there are some people who say, and I don't always, we can't always believe all these rumors, that these revelations that he exposed more in a signal chat with his family that was leaked by people who want a war with Iran. So there are differences of opinion in the Trump administration about whether the U.S. should do this. But so far, Trump seems to be unconvinced. Now, it's always hard to say. Israel, I think they bluff when they said, we'll do it without you. I don't think they'll do that. And they've done that before, by the way. Mm-hmm. They've said, we'll do it without the U.S., but they haven't. So I think they need the U.S. seal of approval. They need to know that the U.S. is backing them up. And so based on past history, I would say Israel, despite its bluster, will not attack Iran without approval from the U.S.
So I think a lot of people that did support Donald Trump, and I'm seeing it not just on social media, but I'm also hearing from people in person that did support him, that this is not what they voted for, that, he ran on, we're going to, stop those wars, especially the Ukraine war, right? Like that was going to be like one of the, I think, easier ones for him to possibly do. And then we saw that meltdown between him and Zelensky in the White House at the press conference and all those types of things. And now people are starting to say, like, what is happening? Like, this is not what he said that he was going to do. Behind the scenes, there are people who are saying that he doesn't want these wars at all. He doesn't want any of this. But what I always say to people is, like, it doesn't matter what it's all about what you're doing, right? So you can say one thing behind closed doors, but people are going to look at your actions, and they're also going to look at your rhetoric, especially when you have these press conferences. So what do you think is happening there? Why do you think he hasn't ended this war in Ukraine yet? And why do you think he's allowing things to continue to escalate in the Middle East?
I think, the insidious thing is everybody runs for office claiming they don't want wars. That tells you the people don't want wars. So the first time he ran, I'm getting rid of the forever wars. Biden ran for office criticizing him for threatening Iran. He runs again, I'm going to end this war in Ukraine. I could do it in a day, typical Trumpian fashion. Of course, you can't do it in a day. But so they know what people want. People don't want wars. People don't want an $800 billion. He says it could be $1 trillion military budget. That's not what people want. But they want it. The military industrial complex wants it. And so there is this constant effort to make a war somewhere, or continue one that started by someone else. Now, the issue with Ukraine, Trump wants to target China. And the U.S. can't target China if it's made this commitment in Ukraine. That's what he really wants. He wants the Europeans to deal with Ukraine, and he can go off. It could be tariffs. It could be surrounding China militarily. It could be something that will be awful and stupid. But he wants to target China. So his desire to get disentangled from Ukraine is all about China and the U.S. wanting to, and it's so ridiculous, try to counter China's influence, its economic prowess. That ship sailed. These tariffs have been a disaster, except for those people who know when to buy and sell stocks. It's been a disaster for everybody else. So that's what Trump is trying to do. As far as Israel goes, he's always been Israel's biggest. I mean, all American presidents, right? Do any of them ever not do what Israel wants? Not in recent memory. And he has his funder, Miriam Adelson, I believe, his biggest funder. And so he's gone along with her and other Zionists. They're having people detained and picked up and students expelled. And that's all because of Zionist influence. He just picked an advisor for Iran who was an Israeli defense. I believe it's the defense was the agency they were involved in with Israel. So he's always going to be a pro-Israel. I mean, and unlike other presidents, he just says it out front. I'm for Israel. That's it. That's all. But I always remind people, Biden is the one who gave him license to continue this continued bloodletting in Gaza.
That's right, because when they weren't willing to stop the genocide, and when Kamala wasn't willing to commit to not send weapons to Israel, that basically left the door open for like that's the thing. The opposition party wasn't showing opposition on that issue and on some other ones, but particularly on that issue, they weren't showing opposition.
No, there's no opposition about Israel. It's excuse me, Israel, Netanyahu spoke to Congress last summer. It was the fourth time. No foreign leader has addressed Congress 4 times. Why does any foreign leader need to talk to Congress 4 times? But he did. And I don't know if you remember, it was disgraceful. They jumped up and down, standing ovations. It was like, trained seals clapping their flippers, in deference to this man who since that time, the ICC finally issued an arrest warrant. It doesn't matter, though. He was welcomed to the White House as if he wasn't an indicted war criminal. So Israel has a Congress. They're not the only ones. The banks have a Congress. Big Pharma has a Congress. All these other entities have a Congress, but the people don't. We don't get what we want. Other interests do. And Israel's just one example. But so that's where we are, with Israel having a vice grip on U.S. policy to a disgraceful degree, because it's not what the people want. There's recently a poll showing for the first time a majority of Americans have a negative view of Israel. Yep. People with a positive view of Israel are now in the minority, and I would hope, but that doesn't seem to move the needle politically at all.
No, it doesn't. And it makes me wonder, do you see an end to any of these conflicts like Ukraine or Gaza? Do you see an end to that before the end of Trump's administration?
An end to Ukraine, possibly. Russia's winning. They've been winning for a while. They have, a bigger army. Their army's now bigger than it was in 2022, by the way. And Biden instigated, I believe we've talked about this before, Biden instigated that. It was, thinking they were going to destroy Russia's economy if they sanctioned Russia, or Putin would be kicked out, or Putin's still there. They've weathered the sanctions. The ruble is doing well. They, nothing that they predicted was going to happen has happened, except Europeans have screwed themselves. But if, and Trump has been in this negotiation because what he really wants is a pause. He doesn't want the war to end. And Russia is saying no. Look what happened in Syria in December. That all happened because of a pause. They left those fighters in place. Then they were reactivated. And the next thing you knew, Assad was on his way to go live in Russia. So Putin is, whatever else he is not stupid. He's like, there's not going to be a pause. We are going to keep fighting unless you make good on the request we've been making for years to have a security agreement about Ukraine. That's what they want, and they don't want to hear anything else. So they are going to keep fighting. Now, it could happen that Russia just wins. The European countries are dedicated to Ukraine, dedicated to keeping U.S. interest in Europe. They don't want the U.S. to lose interest in Europe. So they are, so there was this, that I thought it was funny, though, that disaster with Zelensky in the Oval Office and Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the UK, who doesn't care about anything else but Ukraine, mind you, has this big thing, and Emmanuel Macron goes and they claim we're going to send troops to Ukraine. They have very small armies. They can't really do much. So what we need is a president to say, the U.S. is out. We're not allocating any more money to Ukraine. You guys figure it out. We're out. But that's not what Trump really wants. He wants a pause. And then he can turn his attention to China, to try to obstructing China in any way that he can. So it's possible for Russia to just win and it's over. That could happen. The Middle East, I hate to hear myself say this, but I don't think that is going to change. Israel controls U.S. foreign and domestic policy. People, Bernie Sanders got 15 senators to say the U.S. should stop giving weapons to Israel, and those 15 were all immediately attacked by AIPAC. So I don't see. First of all, it's not what Trump, the current president, wants, and I don't see anybody else standing up in the brave way they would have to in order to stop him. So sadly, I don't think that is going to change.
Margaret, Kimberly, thank you so much for your time. Again, where can people follow your work?
BlackAgendaReport.com. I'm on X, Freedom Ride blog. Also, my book I wrote a few years ago, Prejudential, Black America and the Presidents. You can get it from Steerforth Press. You can get it on all the book websites or order it from your local bookstore. And I would appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Margaret.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, guys, that was the Margaret Kimberly. Over at RBN, we call her Auntie Margaret sometimes. We're like, it's Auntie Margaret. But great information there, guys. Margaret is a wealth of information. Definitely follow Black Agenda Report. They cover so many different things that I think you need to hear about. Now, tonight's theme is what matters most, ladies and gentlemen. So we have a lot to get into. We have quite a bit to discuss. First and foremost, let's go ahead and dive into the patrons. Let's give them a shout out to the patrons. Shout out to the patrons. Patrons, shout out. Patrons now. We need a patron song. Shout out to the patrons. All right. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories. Thank you guys so much. We have Ultimate, Sabinators. There's also Sabsters. Don't forget about those Sabbies in the house. And we also have members. All of their names are listed here, ladies and gentlemen. And you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen on the ticker. Thank you. Thank you guys so much. I said so much. Really do appreciate you there, fam. Let's go to some of the comments and then we're going to dive into some of the other stories, ladies and gentlemen. It's interesting. I had to stop listening to the radio. Every now and then, sometimes when I'm driving, I'll just have on the radio instead of Spotify or whatever. And there's this one radio station that I listen to and they play 80s and 90s tunes, so I love the 80s and 90s songs. 90s are probably my fave, because that's me. That's me. Right. And they were playing it's that song today. Do you guys remember back when ska kind of had its phase? No doubt when they first came out was ska. At least I would have called it that, ska. When they came out with Tragic Kingdom, that was more of a ska sound. There was Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, which kind of had more of a ska sound or whatever. And so they were playing old school, no doubt. So they were playing I'm Just a Girl. Remember, I'm just a girl. So it's kind of been stuck in my head. And I kind of want to go back and listen to that CD again, which I have over there somewhere. The Tragic Kingdom CD, the spider webs. Sorry, I'm not home right now, walking through the spider webs. Leave a message and I'll call you back. All right, let's give a shout out to Kathy Johnson for becoming a member. Give Kathy a big whoop, whoop. And thank you, Simply Anthony Good. Deep dive time. Yes, we are doing a big deep dive tonight. Christine says Biden was showing signs of dementia when he was running against Bernie in 2019. This is true. During the debates, the Democrat debates. And the Oracle says what we have is what capitalism allows, an ever escalating crisis for the working class and poor. Well said there. If you haven't done so, folks, don't forget to smash that like button. Thank you. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share like a Care Bear. The theme, ladies and gentlemen, is what matters most? What matters most? And I want you to ask that for this story here. It sounds like behind the scenes that the White House is possibly looking for a replacement for Pete Hegseth, who's the Secretary of Defense. Why would they be doing that? Well, let's get into what happened over the weekend. Apparently, there was another Signal group chat leak from Pete Hegseth, this time to his family members. That's one part of it. And then another part of this has to do with Iran. Let's get into the Signal chat first, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, it happened again, fam. It happened again.
Multiple sources tell CNN Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth revealed attack plans for airstrikes on Houthi rebels in Yemen in another Signal chat. This one included his wife, brother, and personal attorney. Now, this second Signal chat is in addition to the one Hegseth used to communicate about military plans with cabinet officials last month that is now under investigation by the Defense Department's acting inspector general. I want to go straight to CNN's Kevin Liptak, who is at the White House for more on this. Kevin, what are we learning about this?
Yeah, and if this all sounds sort of reminiscent of that scandal that engulfed the administration about a month ago, it should, because the Secretary of Defense, we are now learning, shared very similar details about the U.S. attack plans on the Houthi rebels in Yemen on a second Signal group. And we understand that this included things like takeoff times for some of those fighter jets as they were preparing to strike those targets in Yemen. The big difference here is who comprised each of these Signal groups, because remember that first time around, that group was created by the National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz. It was intended to coordinate this attack with members of the cabinet officials who were in top national security positions in the administration, and he inadvertently included the journalist Jeffrey Goldberg. This new Signal group that we are just learning about this evening included some members of Pete Hegseth's inner circle who are, it's not clear what reason they would have to have this information about the strikes that the U.S. was planning to carry out. It included his brother and his personal attorney. They both work at the Pentagon. It's not clear whether they have security clearances. It also included his wife, Jennifer, who has accompanied him previously in meetings with other foreign officials, which has raised some eyebrows among certain officials at the Pentagon. Now, as you mentioned, that original Signal sort of snafu is now being investigated by the Inspector General at the Pentagon. It's not clear whether this latest revelation will be included in the review. The Pentagon officially has not commented on these latest revelations, which I should note were first reported by the New York Times. But this does punctuate a period of chaos inside the Pentagon and inside the inner circle.
It shows a pattern. It shows a pattern of behavior. Like one time, like, whoops, that was an accident, or woo, we don't know how that happened. Twice, it shows a pattern of behavior. I told you guys this before about Signal. Signal is not all of these message chat groups, which I've been a part of before. WhatsApp, Signal. I think there's another one. Is WeChat still around? They're not as safe as people would think, right? There have been times where I'm like, how did someone find me on Signal, right? Like there are times when I used to use it, I don't use it anymore, where I would get a notification that says so-and-so is on Signal. I'm like, okay, do they want me to know that? Did that person want me to know that they joined Signal? Like, why are you announcing this to me? You know, just things like that. So it's not safe. Obviously, we are talking about foreign policy information here that they are saying that certain people were not supposed to see, and they did see it. But I also feel like this issue isn't the only issue as to why they could be looking to remove Pete Hegseth. And we'll get to that other one in just a second. They already fired one of his staff members. because of how they felt about Iran and these wars. And we'll show you that clip as well. I just don't think that this is the only reason, because Trump came forward recently, made a statement, and he said that he supports Pete Hegseth, and that he wasn't critical of what happened here. At least publicly, Donald Trump was not critical of what Pete Hegseth did here. I don't think this is the reason. It could be what they're using as their reason. Now, obviously, that information should be secure. It should not be getting out to other people, but here we are. But I also think it's convenient for them to use this reason and not the other one, which I'm going to get to. Let's continue.
Of Pete Hegseth. You'll remember just last week, senior officials who were in sort of his front office at the Pentagon were fired essentially for what officials described as a leak investigation. And this is all sort of drawing questions, including from some loyalists, some allies of Pete Hegseth, at how this chaos has been allowed to perpetuate. We just heard from John Ulyat, who until recently was Pete Hegseth's press secretary at the Pentagon. He says that it's been a month of total chaos at the Pentagon, from leaks of sensitive operational plans to mass firings. The dysfunction is now a major distraction for the president, who deserves better from his senior leadership. Ulyat goes on to say even strong backers of the secretary, like me, must admit the last month has been a full-blown meltdown at the Pentagon, and it's becoming a real problem for the administration.
For the administration, it makes it look like you don't know what you're doing, right? And this speaks to the other issue that people had in the very beginning when Donald Trump selected Pete Hegseth. People were like, this dude is not qualified for this position, but people went ahead and voted for him anyway. So just keep this in mind. It's not like some of the same people who were criticizing that pick that Donald Trump had of Pete Hegseth, they still voted for him when it was time to decide whether or not he should have that position. So just keep that in mind. But it points to that. Like right now, people are saying, especially online, people are saying like, oh, we told you he wasn't qualified. People are saying, oh, guess it's back to Fox News. People are saying things like, did he have a couple of drinks? All those types of things. But it points to that. It shows that, oh boy, you have made a lot. It's only April. It's only April. Too much has happened too soon.
Part of the problem, of course, is that this is not sort of a quiet period for national security. You have Pete Hegseth making sort of preparations on the president's command, these designs on the Panama Canal. He was just there visiting earlier this month. You also have this buildup of U.S. assets in the Middle East in preparation for a potential Israeli strike on Iran. You also have tensions in Asia. So this is a fraught period for the Pentagon to be undergoing, this period of chaos. And certainly, I think now you'll hear from officials who are questioning whether Pete Hegseth is sort of the man for the job at this very fraught moment. I should also note that when those original war plans, attack plans were shared in the Signal group, the administration and the White House and President Trump denied that there was anything classified contained in that information. Of course, that drew a lot of skepticism from almost every national security analyst that we talked to, Jessica.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. It's not looking good for Pete, guys. Pete, it's not looking good for you. Not looking good at all. But there's more. We have to show you something else as well, because people need to see this. Pete Hegseth, one of his staff members, and we talked about this before, that he was removed, he was fired. His name is Dan Caldwell. Dan Caldwell was one of the strong, this is Tucker Carlson here. Dan Caldwell was one of the strongest voices at the Pentagon opposing war with Iran. Then he was falsely accused of leaking classified documents and fired. So let's get to this part here. Dan Caldwell, and listen to what he said to Tucker Carlson about Iran.
And you feel it. You feel it. And it I'm not involved at all. I'm just watching. But it seems like the fastest way to derail the whole project, the Trump administration and the United States of America, is a war with Iran. And that's why I've just been watching it as carefully as I can, because I feel like, again, if you hated Donald Trump and you hated what the administration is doing on immigration, trade, anti-wokeness, whatever, and you wanted to stop it, the first thing you would do is apply pressure to have the U.S. military engage in a war with Iran. I mean, that's my perspective on it anyway.
I would think that, and also continuing to do what we've been doing previously in Russia, Ukraine.
For sure. Though I don't know why. Well, I'm going to ask you all about this, but it feels like Witkoff is helping a lot there. God bless.
I've already said he's a godsend.
God bless Steve Witkoff. I couldn't agree more. As a man and as an instrument of peace, and a figure now out of history. Okay, so you did make, just from an outsider's perspective, one maybe career mistake by giving on-the-record interviews before you went in, describing your foreign policy views, which I think are fully within the mainstream of the world in the U.S., but out of the mainstream among, warmongers in Washington. So, like, people knew that you weren't fully on board with the regime change program. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I was very open about it. I was very on the record about it. And most of the time when I was saying that we shouldn't do this, it was actually in support of, the president's stated preferences. Like, the president clearly doesn't want this. In the first term, there were people in his administration that wanted it. He clearly didn't want it. And so it was supporting people who didn't want the war. And so I was essentially...
But Donald Trump has said, and now his actions make perfectly clear, he would strongly prefer a diplomatic solution.
Correct. I don't want to speak for the president, but it's fairly obvious that that's what he wants.
Well, he said it. I mean, He said it again, and he ran on it. So it's not a crazy position. And now things are getting so bonkers in this country that saying that makes you a bigot or something, a Nazi. I'm just going to ignore all that. And I just want to get back to your experience. So I'm just watching this from the outside, and I'm thinking, having spent my life in D.C., I was like, Dan Caldwell's got a target on his back that I don't know if he knows that.
Yeah.
If you look at Dan Caldwell in this interview, he looks a little bit afraid. Like, I noticed that, like, he looks a little, maybe he's just a little nervous, but he looks a little bit like afraid, a little bit timid here.
And then I read all of a sudden that you're a traitor. You're like marched out of the Pentagon for leaking, right? And then the whispering campaign, the character assassination campaign begins, and here's its outline. I don't want to upset you. You may not even be aware of this. Dan Caldwell leaked classified information to liberal media outlets, to the media, to NBC News, for example. So I just want to be totally direct with you. Did you leak classified information against the wishes of your superiors to media outlets?
Absolutely not.
Did you photograph classified material and then text pictures of that material to an NBC News reporter?
Absolutely not. And I have not spoken to an NBC reporter while at the Pentagon.
Very interesting there, folks. So I noticed the way that he framed that, against the will or the wishes of your superior. So which would have been Pete Hegseth at that point in time. Again, remember, Dan's no longer there. So some people believe also that it's not just the signal leaks. It's also that Pete Hegseth and, of course, Dan Caldwell do not want this war with Iran. And they feel that's why there seems to have been some type of a target. We don't know. It could be a mixture of both, right? It could be. But you will see now that they are looking for other options. So, Pete was kind of doomed going in anyway. Even some of the people who supported Trump said they don't want Pete Hegseth in that position. And now you see the White House is possibly looking for him to exit. Exclusive, the White House is looking to replace Pete Hegseth as defense secretary. So Pete is not having a good year. Can you say that, folks? In 2025, Pete Hegseth is not having a good year. No. Notice they're not going after everybody, right? They're not trying to get rid of Tulsi Gabbard, right? Remember, she was on that Signal group chat, the first one. She was confronted about it. She had to appear and testify in a hearing about it. But notice you don't hear them trying to get rid of her. So I don't think it's just the Signal chat. I think it's a combination of things. But they're looking to boot the Pete. The White House has begun the process of looking for a new leader at the Pentagon to replace Pete Hegseth. This is according to U.S. official who was not authorized to speak publicly. This comes as Hegseth is again mirrored in controversy over sharing military operational details in a group chat. The defense secretary is under fire after revelations that he shared classified information in a group chat with his wife, brother, lawyer, according to official. The source said Hegseth used Signal messaging app on his personal smartphone, detailing minute-by-minute classified information about airstrikes on Houthi targets in Yemen. It happened at about the same time in March that Hegseth shared similar details with top White House officials in a different Signal chat group. So ask yourself this question. If it happened around the same time, why are we just now hearing about it now? I want people to learn to ask questions on this show. If it happened around the same time, why didn't we hear about it at the same time the first Signal chat leak was reported? Why are we just hearing about it now? So ask yourself that question. Let that sink in for a second. It goes on to go here. His further confirmation, or actually a different one from Caroline. White House Press Secretary Caroline denied that there's an effort to replace Hegseth, posting on X that President Trump strongly stands behind him. Speaking to reporters at the White House, Trump backed Hegseth and said concerns over the Signal chat are a waste of time. He's doing a great job. Ask the Houthis how he's doing. Hegseth had denied wrongdoing at a White House Easter event earlier Monday. This is what the media does. They take anonymous sources from disgruntled former employees, and then they try to slash and burn people, ruin their reputation. It's not going to work with me, he said. He was likely referring to 4 senior advisors who left the Pentagon abruptly last week. 3 other Pentagon advisors, Dan Caldwell, who we just heard from, Colin Carroll, and Darren Selnick, were escorted out of the Pentagon and accused of leaking information to the press. The trio then put out a joint statement on X, calling their dismissal unconscionable and saying that they have not even been told what they stand accused of leaking. So as you can see, folks, like, this is a mess. I don't know. This is an absolute mess here. It does look like there could be possibilities that they may be looking for someone else. Again, what people say publicly and what they say privately can be 2 different things. And a lot of times publicly, you don't want people to know that there could be trouble or like there's turmoil, especially if the administration just started. I mean, it's only April, but you all know from Trump's first term, he's not immune to firing people. He's not immune to firing people. He's fired people from his own administration before and said, okay, you got to get out of here. We're placing you with someone else. But I want you to ask again what matters most, because this is the part of the story I think that people oftentimes are not bringing up. People are talking about the Signal chat leaks, and they're talking about, obviously the issues that people may have with Pete Hegseth. But I think what matters most is the fact that in these chats, they were basically given the go-ahead to kill people in a building to get one person who may or may not have been there. I want to say it again. What matters most is that they were planning and did pursue it to kill civilians, all of these civilians in a building to get one person. And I don't want that to be lost. Do not lose that with this story. That's the important piece, that our government, once again, was committing war crimes. This is exactly what Julian Assange was talking about. The goal isn't to win. It's just to continue a forever war, to continue to launder money. And also they openly kill civilians. It's not just under Trump administration. It happened under Obama too. That's why they wanted to silence Julian Assange. That's really what matters most, folks. That they're openly fine killing civilians. Let's go to some of the comments here in the chat. Thank you, Kid MR. Group chat still group chatting, unfortunately. Stephanie says that Pepe Escobar says Signal was created by the CIA. Interesting. It would not surprise me. It would not. Eric says 99.9% of classified documents should be declassified. And then we would not end up here. We would not end up here. And then Rain says the sad part is I think people know it. How do we get people to care enough to act? Yeah, I think it's just, again, like we just have to tell people what is the real story, what matters the most, right? Like, and I felt like when the corporate media in particular, when they were covering the story, they're so focused on, oh my God, this information was leaked, instead of, oh my God, they are openly killing civilians and they know it to get one person. And I feel like that's where the focus should have been. Crazy stuff, guys. A kid says, Sabby, great point. U.S. government has little respect for innocent folks around the world, and specifically folks in third world. MFs here in the government lack integrity and don't value anyone other than money. And I'll tell you this too. I don't feel like our government has respect for innocent people in this country either. Not just around the world, but also here. Interesting time, folks. Interesting times. All right. We are going to move on to our next story. Again, I think we're doing really good with time. Thank you for hitting that like button if you've done so. And this story was quite a surprise to me and probably to you guys as well, as you enjoyed your Easter Sunday, however you were choosing to celebrate that. And that is this. Pope Francis died on Easter Monday. This was right after he spoke on Easter Sunday. Now, he has been sick with pneumonia. So they're saying that he died from, complications. The reason why we want to talk about Pope Francis is because this is probably the most progressive or progressive leaning Pope that I've seen in my lifetime. And who knows, probably that we'll ever see. We need to talk about some of the good things that Pope Francis did. Now, I know there's a number of people also online that are like, oh my God, he happened to die right after JD Vance met with him. He has been sick. He's been sick for a while. So just FYI, folks, let's not get down that rabbit hole. Okay, let's not go into that type of conspiracy. But let's take a look at some of the things that Pope Francis has done. I think this is really significant.
We do begin tonight with the death of Pope Francis, the leader of 1.3 billion Catholics around the world, and a spiritual figure whose humility and tolerance was felt well beyond the church. Tonight, the Vatican revealing the Pope died of a stroke and heart failure, slipping into a coma just hours after his last appearance from the balcony in St. Peter's Square to celebrate Easter Sunday. During his 12 years as pontiff, Pope Francis proved himself to be the people's pope, reaching out to the poor, the forgotten, the people at the margins. From the moment the former cardinal from Argentina was introduced as Pope Francis, he set the church on a new course. The first pope from Latin America, the first Jesuit, the first to elevate women to positions of church authority, the first to allow priests to bless same-sex couples, asking early on as a pope, who am I to judge? And another first, Pope Francis agreeing to the first ever town hall with American television. Tonight, that moment, we waited at the door inside Vatican walls and then our walk right there across the courtyard with Pope Francis. Millions would watch as the Pope took questions from Americans back here in the U.S. But it has been a remarkable 24 hours. The Pope, who had been in failing health, his battle with pneumonia in the hospital and then out, and then appearing on Easter Sunday. There was so much hope he was getting better. But then the world learning he died just hours later. Tonight,
let's just pause here for a second. One of the things that I want to mention, he was the first pope that I heard of that was pretty open to LGBTQ, pretty open to it. It's like, he said, hey, people are people. It's really not for me to judge what they are doing, what someone else is doing. And that said something that was kind of a change, right? He also continued to speak up in support for Gaza. He called out Israel, which again, it seems to be almost unheard of if you're talking about the popes that we've heard of before. It was very different from what the world was used to. So he shook things up a little bit. And I do feel like that was somewhat needed. Let's go on a little bit more here.
Here, the Pope's will now revealed, his final wishes. ABC's chief international correspondent James Longman at the Vatican tonight, leading us off.
Francis kept people at the heart of his papacy, and tonight thousands flocked to the Vatican to remember him and his message of humility. His sudden death a shock, just hours after greeting the faithful for Easter. Tonight, the Vatican says the 88-year-old suffered a cerebral stroke, fell into a coma, and had irreversible heart failure. He died at 7:35 this morning, local time.
Con profondo dolore.
The Vatican with this announcement, saying Francis dedicated his entire life to his church, teaching universal love, especially toward the poorest and most marginalized. The first Latin American pope dying at the holiest time of the year for Catholics.
Fairly subdued atmosphere here on the square. I mean, yesterday there were thousands of people here, all cheering on Pope Francis. Look, people knew he was sick, but I think they hoped that he was getting better, and now he's gone. I think it's just shock.
And sometimes that happens, you guys, like sometimes, and I don't know if you guys have had like maybe family members that this has happened to, but I've had this happen where sometimes someone is sick and then they get better and then they die after they get better. So that has been known to happen. Like even when he was there on Sunday, I mean, like you could tell he wasn't as healthy as he was before, but he showed up anyway, you know?
This was the extraordinary scene on Easter Sunday in St. Peter's Square. Francis greeting thousands from the Pope-mobile, appearing frail but waving, blessing children in the crowd. That appearance came shortly after the traditional Easter Sunday Mass, where crowds heard what would be the Pope's final message and received his last blessing.
Cari fratelli e sorelle, buona Pasqua.
His voice just a whisper, wishing the crowd a happy Easter, his last message to the world, the same one he spent his life preaching: unity, service, and compassion for society's most vulnerable. Pope Francis spent weeks in the hospital battling pneumonia in both lungs, suffering 2 emergencies that nearly killed him. But
can you imagine having pneumonia in both of your lungs? I mean, pneumonia itself is, it's brutal. If you've ever known someone that had it, it's brutal, especially as if you're older. But imagine having it in both lungs, right? So, yeah.
Seeming to recover, he even made some appearances.
Hello. So good to see you.
Seen here with Vice President Vance on Easter Sunday, one of his last meetings with a world leader.
I know you've not been feeling great, but it's good to see you in better health.
Today, the Vice President reflected on that meeting, writing, "I was happy to see him yesterday, though he was obviously very ill. May God rest his soul." President Trump at the White House today.
He's a very good man who loved the world, and he especially loved people that were having a hard time, and that's good with me.
Former President Obama and First Lady Michelle, who met with the Pope at the White House in 2015, issued a joint statement saying Pope Francis was the rare leader who made us want to be better people. Tonight, cardinals are traveling to the Vatican from around the world, sealing off the official papal apartment, part of a centuries-old tradition, preparing for the Pope's funeral. And tonight, we've learned Pope Francis' final wishes, the Vatican releasing his will late today, saying he wanted to be buried at St. Mary Major Basilica. Francis saying the tomb must be in the earth, simple, without particular decoration, and with the only inscription, Franciscus. And in
that's part of it. So that's part of obviously what happened to Pope Francis. But I just want to get into the Gaza part about this, because again, like he called out Israel. Not only did he call out Israel, but he said this is a genocide, and he said it before he died. So he has been in contact with people in Gaza this entire time, up until the day he died. So let's take a look at that. This is from Al Jazeera. I think this is important for people to see. I don't think everybody realizes this, how he was continuing to stay in touch with people in Gaza.
When it came to the Palestinians, Pope Francis was arguably the most supportive pope in modern times. In the aftermath of October 2023, a little more than a month into the war in Gaza, he said what Israel was doing was terrorism, and the humanitarian crisis there could be considered a genocide.
Questa mattina ho ricevuto This morning, I received 2 delegations, one of Israelis who have relatives held hostage in the Gaza Strip, and another of Palestinians who have relatives imprisoned in Israel. They suffer so much, and I heard how both sides suffer. Wars do this, but we have gone beyond wars. This is not war. This is terrorism.
For an institution that for centuries used papal decrees to legitimize territorial expansion and European colonialism, and in modern times remained neutral on the Israel-Palestine conflict, Pope Francis's comments were a radical departure from the Church's legacy and its usual stance, but consistent with his reformist papacy and commitment to social justice.
Ieri sono stati bombardati bambini.
Yesterday, children were bombed. This is cruelty. This is not war.
Crudeltà.
So you hear that? Yeah. And more people should have called it out back then.
Pope Francis did not stop at words. He reached out directly to those suffering in Gaza with frequent video calls. Nearly every night since Israel's bombing campaign began, he called the Holy Family Church in Gaza, which sheltered hundreds of Christians and Muslims.
Salam alaikum.
The brief calls were a small but powerful gesture, the Vatican said, offering connection and hope amidst isolation.
Ieri ho chiamato.
Yesterday, I called, as I do every day, the parish in Gaza. They told me, today we ate lentils with chicken. It's important because these days they weren't used to it and only made some vegetables. They were happy, but let us pray for Gaza, for peace.
In his final days, even in critical condition, he stayed in touch with the Gaza parish.
We rejoice to hear his voice. This is always comforting, knowing that despite his delicate state of health, he continues to think and pray for everyone, for peace in Gaza, and thanking us at the same time for our constant prayers give us great joy even in the midst of so many trials.
And months before his passing, Pope Francis appointed the first new cardinal of Palestinian origin to the College of Cardinals. When the world's most powerful leaders failed to act, many offering unquestioning support to Israel or remaining silent in the face of massacre after massacre, people in Gaza will remember Pope Francis for seeing their suffering clearly and speaking of it plainly. A rare moral voice rising above political calculation.
Yeah. So that was another thing. Like I said, he's probably been the most left-leaning pope that I'm aware of. But yes, he has passed away, and I don't know. I don't know who they would put in his place, but I wouldn't be surprised if it would be someone who's the exact opposite, right? Someone that would be supportive of Israel. I wouldn't be surprised if that were to happen. And that would be sad. I think that would be sad. Whatever you think of religion, I don't care if you're Catholic or not. I'm not Catholic, but I think that if the next pope is someone who unequivocally backs Israel, that's going to be really sad. All right, guys, let's go to some of the comments and we shall continue on. Pat says, you can't bring people into the church by pushing them away. I agree. Skylar says, shout out to Pope Francis, but I ain't looked at the popehood since learning that popes were historically corrupt AF, slept around and used their positions for wealth. Miss Ritchie says, yes, it happened to my mom. She snapped out of her coma to ask me for Starbucks. These are the things that can happen. Quick announcement, folks, and we do have an extra story because I don't want to forget about the student loan ones as well. This weekend is the mutual aid workshop. Let me go ahead and put this up here. I know people have been asking me about this, particularly on call-in. That is this Saturday, April 26th at 11 a.m. ET. The way that you sign up from this is through my newsletter. So if you are not subscribed to my newsletter, make sure you do that. The link to my Substack, all that stuff is in the description box of all my videos. Sign up for my newsletter because I will be sending that message out this week via my newsletter. I am not posting this on Twitter. I am not posting this on Facebook. It'll attract all kind of trolls and feds and all that kind of stuff. You will be required to enter your name and your email address, so I have a way to get in touch with you. But if you want to do the workshop again, that'll be this Saturday at 11 a.m. Sign up for my newsletter if you're not signed up. That way you know how you'll get the communication, because this is not something I'm going to post on social media. And yeah, so excited for that. I know people have been asking, so that'll be this Saturday. It should last 1 hour. 1 hour. So prepare yourself for that. I'll try to have another one again, either in May, maybe June, because May's going to be pretty busy for me because I still have the documentary. So I'll try to have another one if you can't make this one as well. I'm going to try to get in the habit of having these at least once a month if I can. And one more announcement too. I know you guys have been asking me about this, so I want to show you I did make a change to my homepage. A number of you have reached out and asked me, can I make a section for deep dives? So I did that today. So there's now a section on the homepage for deep dives. So you'll go, if you just want to see the deep dives, you can just go straight to that. I think the last one we just did was JFK Jr. and Ted Kennedy, shocking reveal. And you just have a whole slew of them there. Of course, there's the Diddy one, there's JFK again, the billionaires, Hakeem, Gloria Steinem, the billionaires who stole all the water, the Congressional Black Caucus sellouts, the self-made myth about billionaires. And of course, actually the very first one was the Cory Booker recruiting Black people for AIPAC. Yeah. So there aren't a lot of them because it was something I just started to ramp up more recently, but you can find that now on the homepage. So that way that won't be an issue for you. Because I know people are like, can you tell me where to find that video that you did of such and such? And I'm like, oh, you know what? I should just make a section for that just to make it easier for people to find. So that is now there. Cool. All right. Are we ready for Judy? We are ready for Judy. Let's make these pictures bigger here. We're ready for Judy. We'll do Judy. And then we'll do student loans. I have to do that student loan one. I don't want to forget about that because that was announced today. Actually, I should do student loan first because it's a quicker topic. Let me go ahead and bring that up here. Sorry, guys. Just Sabby's world. That's all. It's live. This is what happens when we're live. Okay, great. That one's there. All right. Let's jump into the announcement that came out today. By the time you see this, the clip of this, it will be Wednesday. The announcement about what is going to happen with the student loan. So this is really important. And I know a number of you may fall in this particular category. Let's go ahead and bring this up here. This was the announcement that was made today from the Trump administration. Here we go. Brace yourselves, folks.
In other news, the Trump administration has announced we will put an end to Joe Biden's illegal student loan bailout attempts. No student loan has been referred to collection since March of 2020. That comes to an end. On May 5th,
Sorry, guys. There we go.
In other news, the Trump administration has announced we will put an end to Joe Biden's illegal student loan bailout attempts. No student loan has been referred to collection since March of 2020. That comes to an end. On May 5th, the Department of Education will resume involuntary collections for borrowers with defaulted federal student loans. The student loan portfolio controlled by the federal government is nearly $1.6 trillion, but fewer than 4 out of 10 borrowers are in repayment. This is unsustainable, unfair, and a huge liability for American taxpayers. Debt cannot be wiped away. It just ends up getting transferred to others. So why?
Pause. Let me explain to you why this is going to be a big, big, big problem. So we have a problem, folks, because most of the people that have defaulted student loans aren't paying them. And someone already said it in the chat. I was going to point this out, Rich. The student loan portfolio is nearly 1.6 trillion. Levitt said with fewer than 4 out of 10 borrowers up to speed with their loans. This is going to be a big, big problem because a lot of people who are not paying them aren't paying them because they can't afford to pay it. And I'll let her finish, and I'm going to tell you the domino effect that this is going to have.
Why should Americans who didn't go to college or went to college and responsibly paid back their loans pay for the student loans of other Americans? The Trump administration will never force taxpayers to pay student loan debts that don't belong to them. Student loan borrowers need clarity, and we're finally giving it to them. Borrowers will now be clearly expected to repay their loans, and those who default on their loan obligations will face involuntary collections. The government can and will collect defaulted federal student loan debt by withholding money from borrowers, tax refunds, federal pensions, and even their wages. America is $36 trillion in debt. We must get our fiscal house in order and restore common sense to our country. If you take out a loan, you have to pay it back. It's very simple. President Trump will not kick the can down the road anymore.
So,
portfolio controlled by the federal government is nearly $1.6 trillion, but fewer than 4 out of 10 borrowers are in repayment. This is unsustainable, unfair.
Pause right there. So here's something we need to address first, the debt, right? 1.6 trillion or whatever. Notice how every time they say we're having these economic problems, we have a lot of debt. Notice who they choose to attack, who they choose to target. They're not targeting the corporations. They're not targeting Wall Street. They're not tackling that damn defense budget either. The defense budget in this country, we're talking over $800 billion for defense. They're not going after billionaires. They're not going after the people they really should go after. They're going after the working class. Now, do you believe me when I tell you that both of these parties do not support the working class, that both parties are corrupt? I know people have different opinions about student loan debt. Some of you feel like, no, people need to pay it back. Most people that I know, if they could pay it back, they would. Most people that I know, if they could pay it off, they would pay it off like that. The problem is a lot of people can't. And the reason why those loans were not going to collections was because of the pandemic, people being laid off, people losing their jobs, businesses closing, obviously people not having the income to be able to pay even for the collections. That's why there was that hold on that. Don't send it to collections. And we're not saying that the U.S. is not in debt. The U.S. is in debt. But we've been in debt for a long time. But it reminds me of the 2008 housing crisis, where instead of Barack Obama choosing to go after Wall Street and the predatory banks, he chose to go after the working class, the people who lost their homes. Both parties have been doing this. They just done it in different ways and on different issues. So people aren't paying off these loans because they can't afford to. Now, let me explain to you the domino effect that this is going to have. And I'll bring up this from AP as well, because this is a really big story and people really need to know like how this is going to impact other people as well, not just people who took out student loans. And I think that's the part that some people don't really want to get into. We'll bring up this here. Excuse me. Student loans in default to be referred to debt collection education department says. So here we go. Currently, roughly 5.3 million borrowers are in default on their federal student loans. 5.3 million. So let's just work with that math a little bit there in your head. And we'll get into the domino effect. First of all, most people spend most of their money on what? When you get paid, what does most of your money go to? Housing, rent, mortgage, roof overhead, shelter in place. That's where most of your money goes. So let's start with the first domino. They send all of these to collections, which means that they are going to garnish your wages. If you're even making any wages, that's the other thing. Some people don't have jobs, but they are going to garnish your wages. Now your paycheck is going to be less than what it was before because of the garnish of the student loan payment. And I think it used to be the maximum they could do was 15%. I don't know if that's going to remain the same or not. So hold on with me here and ride this wave with me. Now you have a smaller paycheck, but your rent stays the same. And next year, your rent will increase because your landlord don't care that you have to pay your student loans back. Because your landlord is running a business too, and they're just trying to get their coin, okay? So now you have to pay your rent. You have less money to do so, which means some of these people are going to fall behind on their rent. And if you fall behind too many months in a row, depending on what state you live in, you could end up evicted. Let's back up just a little bit. Fall behind on the rent. That is going to affect landlords. Knock the second domino down. Now the landlords aren't receiving the income that they used to receive because you don't have the income. You have the same income, but because your wages have been garnished, you don't have the same amount of money left over that you used to pay your rent. See, the landlord has to answer to somebody too. They don't just come by and say, give me the rent. They have to pay people too. This is the domino effect. Now let's talk about credit. Your credit is going to be impacted. If you already defaulted on your loans, your credit is already impacted anyway. But now once it's going to go to collections, that could be another snag on your credit. So your credit score is going to go down. Down, down, down. And that's going to stop you from getting anything else. So if you get evicted because you can't continue to pay your rent, so you need to go live somewhere else and you want to try to find a place to live that's cheaper, now you got that mark on your credit report. So how are you going to get another apartment? Some people are going to have to move back in with mom and dad. And mom and dad may not be prepared for that. In fact, mom and dad might be chilling. They may be empty nesters. Who knows? They're probably running around the house just having a good old time. And you call the phone and say, Mom, I need to come back home. It happened to my generation. I'm millennial. It happened to us. It's going to happen to more people. And that's even if your parents are still alive, first of all. So we're looking at increase in evictions. We're looking at an increase in the homelessness rate. And we're also looking at a problem for the economy. Because if people can't pay, we're talking about entire apartment buildings can have issue where the landlord may have to say, nobody can come up with the full amount of the rent. I got to get all these people out. You know what I'm saying? So you could end up with empty buildings. It has happened before. Let's continue on here. I'm just preparing you for what is to come. The Trump administration announcement marks an end to a period of leniency that began during the pandemic. See what I was telling you? No federal student loans have been referred to collections since March 2020, including those in default. Under President Biden, the Education Department tried multiple times to give broad forgiveness to student loans, only to be stopped by the courts. So we'll jump to this part right here. This will begin on May 5th. So that's another thing. You guys have about 2 weeks. If this includes you, May 5th. You don't have long before this begins. And if you're wondering, oh, they're not going to be able to garnish my wages. They're not going to contact my employer. Ha ha hell. This is what they did before. Before that leniency was in place, yes, people's wages were garnished. You can't stop that. Like there's literally you cannot stop that unless you just don't have a job. Because then they can't really come. What are they going to garnish if you're not working anywhere? It goes on to say here, again, May 5th, the department will begin involuntary collection through the Treasury Department's offset program, which withholds government payments, including tax refunds, federal salaries, and other benefits from people with past due debts to the government. After a 30-day notice, the department also will begin garnishing wages for borrowers in default. So if you were expecting a tax refund, they're trying to take that. So if you're in that situation, don't expect that tax refund, right? Now I'm going to show you a way that you may be able to get around this a little bit. The decision to send debt to collections drew criticism from advocates who said borrowers had experienced whiplash and confusion with the changing student loan policies between the Biden and Trump administrations. This is cruel, unnecessary, and will further fan the flames of economic chaos for working families across the country. That's coming from Mike Pierce, who's the executive director of the Student Borrower Protection Center. Already, many borrowers have been bracing for obligations coming due. So this is not fair to the working class. Like, you cannot do this to these people, particularly young people. How much more are people going to put them through? I mean, 08 housing crisis, pandemic. Like, you can't just keep bouncing people around like this. You really can't. And I know some of you say, well, I paid mine off. Congratulations. But the reality is a lot of people haven't. Do you see how many people have defaulted on their loans? Over 5 million people. Over 5 million people. This economy is not working. It's not working for working class people. This is going to be a disaster. And don't be surprised if some people who got parents that still got space like that and say, you can come stay with me. Don't be surprised if some people quit their job and move back in with their parents. And then how much are your wages? If you're making $25 an hour, are you going to be able to continue to pay your rent? Probably not. We don't have a living wage in this country. They didn't even want to increase the damn minimum wage. They didn't even want to increase that to $15 an hour. So we definitely don't have a living wage in this country. In 2020, President Donald Trump paused federal student loan payments and interest accrual as a temporary relief measure for student borrowers. The pause in payments was extended multiple times by the Biden administration through 2023. I had to point that out. Who initiated the pause? See, this is what people forget. Everyone wants to give credit to Biden for the pause in student loan, but who initiated it? It was Donald Trump who initiated it under his first administration. So this is a different person you're seeing. Like what you're seeing right now in the White House, this is different than before. Borrowers who don't make payments for 9 months go into a default, which is reported on their credit scores and can go to collections. Along with the borrowers already in default, around another 4 million are 91 to 180 days late on their loan payments. Less than 40% of all borrowers are current on their student loans, department officials said. Let me highlight this. Less than 40%. See, people thought I was joking. People thought I was being an annoying lefty by bringing this up. You don't even have half of the people who took out student loans current on their student loans. People need to talk about the people who lost their businesses during the pandemic. And don't come to me with the PPE. Half the time that money didn't even go where it was supposed to go in the first damn place. The big mistake with that was they gave the money to the governors and trusted them to do the right damn thing. This is very scary. This is very, very scary. Now, I'm not in default. I'm not affected by this, but I know plenty who are. Plenty of people who are. And you're possibly looking at people that are going to get kicked out. They're going to lose their apartment. barely making it as it is. If you have a car payment, good luck. And if you have a car payment, you got car insurance, good luck. Something's going to have to give. Most of our paycheck goes to our housing. This is what I'm saying. So this is what happens when you don't give people a living wage. This is wrong. And I know people have different opinions about it, but you cannot keep doing this to these kids. You cannot take this away, give it back, give them this, take this away. You are sending millennials, Gen Z, and future generations, you are sending them into a downward economic spiral. It is going to crash and it is going to burn. Now, if you're paying attention, have you seen Donald Trump do something for working class people? No. There are things being done for Israel, of course. There are things being done in terms of, oh, let's get rid of woke, that type of thing. Those things don't cost money. He's taking away from the museums. He doesn't want slavery in the museums, wants to erase our history. And now the student loan payments, this is going to be a problem. These people are not going to be able to buy homes. These people are not going to be able to build generational wealth. You get what I'm saying? If your credit is fucked, you can't own anything. Nothing. And I didn't write the rules, but that's how it works. And it sucks. It sucks. Student loan debt is the one debt that you can't file for bankruptcy for. You want to know why? That was Joe Biden who put that measure in place. So when Biden said, oh, we're going to pause these payments and people said, yeah, congrats. I'm like, he should do even more than that because he's the reason why you can't file for bankruptcy for it. The debt follows you wherever you go. We're talking about people who cannot afford to make these payments for whatever reason, mainly because we don't have a living wage. These people are going to go into a downward spiral. And then I'm going to go ahead and knock over the third domino. When people are economically down, when they cannot afford to pay for necessities, the bare minimum, especially a roof over their head, what goes up? What increases when people are in economic despair? I'll let you guys guess in the chat. Someone got it already. Bingo. Crime. When I told you guys they don't want you to own anything, I'm dead serious. They don't want you to own anything. They don't care if people can't buy homes. They don't give a damn. They're totally happy with you not owning anything and everybody being forever renters. There's a whole little neighborhood that was just a whole little subdivision that was built in California. I saw this online earlier today. Whole little subdivision of houses only available for rent. You can't buy it. You're only allowed to rent. They don't want you to own anything. If you own your home, keep it in your family. Everybody hear me? I don't care what developer comes up to you and offers you millions of dollars for your home. Keep the home in your family. Trust me, fam. Your kids might need it one day. Yeah, exactly, Adrian. You will own nothing and be happy. This is what they want. They don't want you to own anything. They want people living in micro apartments and just being happy with that. This is why Eric and I were talking about 11 demands. This is what I was trying to tell you guys. It is really us against them. And we can't sit back and continue to say, oh, next presidential election. People need help now. This is the same thing I was trying to get across to Cenk Uygur. People need help now. People don't have time to throw money to all these campaigns hoping that they'll become the nominee, which we all know the DNC is not going to want a progressive to be the nominee anyway. We did this already multiple times. People should be putting their money towards, right now, we should be starting pools to help people be able to try to pay these fucking loans. I'm dead serious. This is going to follow you wherever you go. It doesn't go away. All these politicians right now, people said AOC raised $9 million. I'm telling you guys about that. That's great. You guys got student loans to pay. This is why a lot of people say the only way for this to really change is a general strike. Some people say a revolution. This is why. Do you see how it bounces from administration to administration? One administration says, I'm going to undo what the last one did. Next person comes in and says, I'm going to undo this stuff. You can't keep playing with people's economic future. It really is us. It really is us. It's us, the 99%, against those at the very top. And I sincerely hope for all the people who thought that Donald Trump was going to benefit the working class are waking up and realizing he's not going to help you. Number of black people told me that they were voting for Trump. They said, oh, we voted for Trump because he's going to help out black people. What has Donald Trump done for black community? He's literally trying to remove your history from museums. I will not sit here and allow my viewers to be fooled. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to. You guys got to understand, these people look out for their class interests. They're not looking out for yours. They don't give a damn if people can't afford to pay these student loans. This country's in debt. Yeah, but it's been in debt. There are other things that you can do to cut the debt. All the money coming from the working class, not coming from the billionaires, not coming from Wall Street, not coming from the corporations. Everybody see it now? But they got you fighting over Team Red and Team Blue when both teams have screwed you economically. Biden continued the pause for the student loan payments that Trump started. That was great. Biden tried to help get some student loan forgiven. That was great. Cool. But I said it back then. All of it should. Do you guys see it now? Why I said back then they can forgive all of it? And legally they could have. He should have forgiven all of it. Because nobody would be in this situation right now. Nobody. There would be no garnishing of wages. You wouldn't have the debt. You wouldn't have it. It's us against them. That's what matters most, not which team you're on. Let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Perfect Blackness Senior. What of the loans that the Biden administration has already forgiven? So I don't think it's not that. Like, if your loans were already forgiven, I don't think they can come back and make you pay that. These are people who went into default, who defaulted on their student loans, right? Thank you, Chris. There's a small loophole within the debt collection system of how they can try to suspend a driver's license, which affects right to travel. Prop Sabby / Margaret. Kimberly, thank you always. Joey, how many of those loans co-signed by the parents or grandparents? Just saying, my GMA co-signed mine as my mom's credit was too extended too far with my sister's student loans. I don't know. Everyone's situation is different, right? Miss Ritchie, There's an abandoned shopping center down the street from me, parking lot filled with people living in their cars. Rarely saw this in my town 5 years ago. Yeah, it's becoming more common. Thank you, Anita. In the state newspaper here in Columbia, a guy wrote an op-ed that his credit score decreased by 200 points and his student loan payment went up $3,000 per month. Yeah, it's about to get real. You guys think I'm joking? It's about to get real in these streets. Sun Moon said, Sabby, I talked to so many people affected, myself included, are so damn scared about this. I barely break even these days after bills. This is what I was telling people. That's the reality. Samantha, I took out student loans with my spouse thinking we could pay it together. We had a baby. He died. They have no clue what people are going through. I'm so sorry to hear that, Samantha. Sorry for your loss, but you're 100% correct. That's what I'm saying. They're not in our class. They don't know. They don't understand. You guys think any of Donald Trump's kids had student loans? Thank you, Star Fury. If you have a student loan debt and you pass away, your children pays for that debt. Facts. It's crazy, man. Skylar says, I remember them calling my boss at work to go after her for her student loans. She was bawling at her desk. I will never forget it. I felt so bad for her. Thank you, James. From the man who has gone bankrupt 6 times and didn't pay his subcontractors 300 plus lawsuits against him for not paying his bills. There you go. I don't know, man. This might be the moment that will make a revolution happen. It might be this moment. All right. Let's go to the next story, ladies and gentlemen. Smash that like button if you haven't done so. And we're going to go into something a little bit different, ladies and gentlemen. I know you guys have been waiting for this one. We're going into a Sabby deep dive. It's been a minute, a couple of days, actually. But this one, yeah, I think you guys really need to hear. We're asking what matters most. I want you to think about that as we get into the deep dive of Judy Garland. A lot of people know Judy Garland as Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. But there may be a lot of things that you don't know about Judy Garland that I think you should. Judy Garland was probably one of the earlier cases of abuse in Hollywood. And although many saw her as young Dorothy on the screen, she was a little bit older and she was made to look younger. And there were different ways that Hollywood execs and her mother did that. The way that they went about doing that is what I would refer to as child abuse. No way this would not be child abuse today. What happens to young people when they go into Hollywood? What happens to the kids when they get into the studios, when they're around these executives? You see, it was this gentleman here, Louis Meyer. Louis Meyer was the one who basically, I guess, discovered Judy Garland. Louis Meyer was a part of the abuse, king of MGM Studios. He was who her mother trusted her child to be with. Not just her career, but also her well-being. It is a typical tale that you will see with many children in Hollywood. And I'm talking about Judy Garland. We're doing this deep dive because I want to prove a point. There have been a number of series that have been released over the couple of years. More recently, the Nickelodeon documentary series, where you're hearing these stories now about these kids and how they were abused within the industry. But we're taking it back to Judy Garland just to show you how far back this goes. It's not new, and it's been a problem in Hollywood for quite some time. But it started with her mother. She had a stage mom. Let's get into the humble beginnings of Judy Garland, and you'll see how things continue to get worse.
Minnesota. Her mother didn't want a third child and tried to abort her. Her father had a wayward eye for young men.
He was told, in a polite way, I think, that they had to leave town.
The family moved west to Lancaster, California. Her mother drove her, sometimes dragged her to every studio in nearby L.A. In a 1967 interview with Barbara Walters, not even this great actress could disguise the anger she still felt toward her mother.
Did you have a stage mother, as we have heard about the stage mothers? One that wouldn't quit. A mean one. She was very jealous because she had absolutely no talent. She would sort of stand in the wings when I was a little girl, and if I didn't feel good, if I was sick to my tummy, she'd say, "You get out and sing, or I'll wrap you around the bedpost and break you off short."
Judy Garland there speaking about her mother, who was a stage mom. If you guys aren't familiar, stage moms can be very demanding. Some people call them momagers as well. She had one of those. Like I said, it began at home. So if you're abusing your child, you're not really going to turn something into an issue if Hollywood is abusing your child. I want you to take a look at Judy Garland's face in this interview. This is important because although Judy Garland looks older, she wasn't. And I'll get into that. I'll get into why Judy Garland, as she got older, she looked older than she actually was.
So I'd go out and sing.
Something she didn't tell Barbara. Gerald Clark learned from a childhood friend that young Judy always suspected her mother traded sex for favors with producers and studio execs. September 1935, Judy signed with MGM, the biggest.
That was Louis Mayer right there that we just went by. So her mother was trading sex for her fate. You see where we're going with this, right?
Richest, most star-studded studio in Hollywood. Judy was everybody's favorite girl next door. But the studio's other starlets had an almost patented long-legged MGM look.
She didn't fit into the mold. So now imagine being told that out loud when you're 13, 12 years old.
Which is a terrible age to be anyway.
Absolutely. And you're told you look funny, you're a hunchback, your nose isn't right, what's that going to do to your confidence?
Louis B. Mayer, who was just a bit more uncompromising in the way he ran MGM than Mussolini was in the way he ran Italy, did call Judy my little hunchback.
And we'll pause it there because that's music and that'll be copyright. So we're just going to go to the next part here. So you had a man here, Louis Mayer, who was calling her my little hunchback. Judy Garland's mom had no problem with this. Judy Garland's mom had no problem with this man belittling her daughter. People have to remember that Judy Garland was a kid. A kid. I want you to hear about something else. Something else that she revealed.
He'd say, "This girl is great, and the reason is that she sings from the heart." And with that, he'd always find my left breast with his hand. I often thought I was lucky that I didn't sing with another part of my anatomy.
She is referring to Louis Mayer. Louis Mayer was fondling a child. Judy Garland wasn't 18, 19 years old. It shouldn't have been fondling anyone regardless of their age. She was a child. Hollywood's best kept secret. It took for Judy Garland to come forward about this years later as an adult because Hollywood didn't want to deal with it. They didn't want to talk about it. You have to understand this man, Judy Garland, was indebted to him. She was basically a slave to MGM. And she was a kid. So when she had a contract, it's not like she knew exactly what all of these things meant in the contract. Again, she was a child. Her mom handed her over to this man. He was supposed to look out for her. People ask, what happens to these child stars when they become adults? Why are these people on drugs? You look at the cast members of Different Strokes. People are like, what happened to all of them? Why are they all on drugs? What happened to all these people? What happened to them as children? And somehow this was acceptable. There's more that we'll go into.
And though part of
And that's the singing part. So we'll just go ahead and jump to the next part here. This part. Something else happened to Judy Garland as she got older. Her first marriage. Judy Garland got married. Despite all this craziness, which we'll get into more, she got married and she got pregnant as a married woman. And apparently MGM Studios had a problem with that. Again, she was a married woman, but it wasn't just MGM. Her mother had a problem with that. Judy Garland's mother took her to get an abortion without her knowing what she was going to get. You hear me? Her mother took her to get an abortion without her knowing that's what she was going to get. Listen to it in her own words.
Composer David Rose. Troubled from the start, the marriage was doomed when Judy got pregnant. She wanted a baby, but a pregnancy would have cost MGM millions. The studio convinced her husband and, of course, her mom. Though written in the third person, these are Judy Garland's words.
Where are we going? Never mind, said Mother, you'll see. They drove for about a half hour and pulled up in front of a dreary little establishment outside of town. Her mother took Judy by the hand, led her inside to a shabby little office. In a few minutes, David, her mother, and MGM were satisfied.
How cruel and cold could you be? Judy Garland wanted to keep that baby, but her mom and Louis Mayer of MGM didn't want her to have it. She was a slave to MGM Studios. When I was younger, one of my favorite artists, Prince, I called him the purple one, the great purple one. Prince decided to change his name. And at the time, I didn't really understand it. Changed his name from Prince to like this little weird, funky symbol. Later on, I understood what that was all about. Prince felt like he was a slave to the record company. He changed his name to get out of his contract. This is actually pretty smart when you think about it. This has been going on for years, folks. I want to tell you about some of the other things that happened to Judy Garland, again, when she was a child, just a child. Judy Garland filmed The Wizard of Oz under grueling conditions. So you got to remember, what you see on the screen is not always what's happening off the screen. Leading up to the making of the 1939 classic was a far more treacherous landscape for the teenager to navigate than the fictional perils of Oz. Garland endured excruciating long work hours and a studio system that turned a blind eye to, and in fact often encouraged, the use of substances such as stimulants to keep performers working and sleeping pills to ensure they would be able to rest. They gave a child drugs. They gave her speed and they gave her downers. I'm not sure how child labor laws were back then. I don't even know if we really had them the way that we do today. And even that's questionable sometimes. But Judy Garland was working sometimes 14, 15, 16 hours a day as a kid per her contract. Hardly getting any sleep. This is something that went on to follow Judy Garland into adulthood and what would ultimately lead to her timely demise at the age of 47. It goes on to say By the time the 17-year-old Garland finished filming Oz, she was already addicted to barbiturates and amphetamines. Her use of the drugs had started before the actor slipped into those ruby slippers, in part due to studio bosses who demanded she remain thin and energetic enough to cope with arduous days of filming. Her substance abuse continued for years and ultimately claimed her life. Guess who was the first person to give her drugs? Her mother. Ethel was a frustrated vaudeville performer who put her daughters on stage as early as possible. Goes on to say here, according to Get Happy, The Life of Judy Garland, biographer Gerald Clark, Garland's mother, was the first to provide pills, both for energy and sleep, to her not yet 10-year-old daughter. That's child abuse. It started at home. So when the parent doesn't care for the child, they would not expect a Hollywood executive to do so either. If Judy Garland were to go to her mom and to tell her, "Mom, Louis Mayer touched me inappropriately," what do you think Judy Garland's mom would say? She'd probably tell her to get back out on the stage. Moving on. Studio execs called her fat little pig with pigtails. When she was signed to MGM as a teenager, Garland appeared in more than 24 films for the studio with co-star Mickey Rooney. Under contract, she was constantly scrutinized by studio bosses, particularly in reference to her weight. Garland appeared in her first movie in 1936 at the age of 14. It was a musical comedy about football coaches called Pigskin Parade. Goes on to say here, they went on to refer to her as a fat little pig with pigtails, placed on what would be the first of many diets. Garland's food intake was severely restricted and monitored closely. To maintain her weight, Mayer insisted she consume only chicken soup, black coffee, cigarettes, along with pills to reduce her appetite. Again, that's child abuse. Looking at that diet, I would say it's fair to assume that Judy Garland was malnourished. No vegetables. Why are you giving a kid cigarettes? The coffee, also stimulants. I can imagine Judy Garland's mind was probably a nervous wreck. Imagine being hopped up on stimulants all day and the nicotine from the cigarettes, and then trying to go to sleep for the few hours that they give you, and then you have to get back up and start it all over again. She was a slave to MGM. It goes on to say here, most of her teen and adult life, she had been on either Benzendrin or a diet or both. Garland's third husband, Sid Luft, wrote in his memoir, Judy and I, My Life with Judy Garland. Unlike other actresses, she could not successfully camouflage extra weight, especially because she was dancing and singing in revealing costumes. Just 4 feet 11 inches, she could be underweight and still appear heavy or out of proportion on screen. Garland said taking pills was a way of life, known as pep pills in the industry. Garland wasn't alone in being forced to take drugs. Rooney, her co-star in other films as Babes in Arms, Love Finds Andy Hardy, and Strike Up the Band, was also forced to consume them. Both Garland and Rooney were stretched to the limit for the studio, and neither spoke of what they endured until years later. Listen to this part. They had us working days and nights on end. They'd give us pills to keep us on our feet after we were exhausted. Then they'd take us to the studio hospital and knock us out with sleeping pills. Mickey sprawled out on one bed and me on another, Judy Garland told biographer Paul Donnelly. Then after 4 hours, they'd wake us up, give us pep pills again, so we could work 72 hours in a row. Let me highlight this here. 72 hours in a row. Half the time we were hanging from the ceiling, but it was a way of life for us. What happened to Judy Garland in the Hollywood entertainment industry is probably one of the worst cases for child exploitation. Imagine working 72 hours straight. We can get into payment as well. Believe it or not, Judy Garland wasn't paid what she should have been paid. This goes back to understanding contracts as well. Did you know that on The Wizard of Oz, Judy Garland was the second least paid actor? The least? Toto, the dog. So even though she made all of that, those movies made so much money. The Wizard of Oz made a lot of money. Dorothy, Judy didn't. It was exploitation at its finest. Using these kids the way that they did. We get into walking advertisement for sleeping pills. The actor said she was a walking advertisement for sleeping pills. Again, on screen, we couldn't tell this. We couldn't tell. It says here, yo-yo dieting and reliance on pills was now so firmly established that Garland struggled with both, along with heavy alcohol consumption for the rest of her life. At times, I have been pretty much a walking advertisement for sleeping pills. Even though pills come on doctors' prescriptions, as mine did, they can be a tremendous strain on the nervous system. Substance abuse was an issue she fought for the remainder of her life until she died of an accidental overdose in 1969 at the age of 47. Judy Garland was only 47 years old when she died. Those types of drugs being put into your system every day, and especially at such a young late age, that is not an easy addiction to overcome. Your body, your nervous system becomes used to the stimulant. Then it becomes dependent on the downer to get you to go back to sleep. A child was abused and the entire entertainment industry looked the other way. Now, why is that important and relevant today? When you look at the documentary that was released recently about Nickelodeon, how do you think that some of those producers were able to get away with what they did to the actors on Nickelodeon? How do you think they were able to get away with what they did to some of those kids? Secret in the business. Years ago, some actors tried to come forward about this and tell people that what was happening to kids in the entertainment industry. One of them was Corey Feldman. He was heavily ridiculed and blackballed after he came forward to tell people what happened to him and his friend, Corey Haim. Then years later, more people come forward. And now people have more concerns. Has anybody apologized to Corey Feldman? Judy Garland died at the age of 47. I want to show you what she looked like later on. You will also see in this image here, Judy Garland looks older than she actually is. That's what happens when you constantly have drug and substance abuse. You look older. Here she's talking about how she may have been used by the entertainment industry. Here she's talking about how she doesn't think she was given her rightful pay. Listen to this.
I know you are. Did you learn anything as a child star yourself in treating your children? Everybody says you were a victim of a stage mother and driving, and you got to be a success, and that's the most important thing in the world in show business.
I don't think I liked her well enough to learn anything. I was just scared of her, and I don't really know whether I subconsciously raised my children the exact opposite. I don't think I did. We just have an awful lot of fun, and they're full of sunshine, you know.
You notice that during this interview here, compare it to the one that I showed you earlier. Notice that her speech is a little hazy, maybe in some instances a little bit slurred. Let's continue.
Have you been victimized, Judy, with all the money you've earned?
Oh, indeed.
Disappeared and so forth?
Yes.
Ever figure out, Judy, because you've been responsible for concert tours?
Well, I've never put it down on paper or anything, but it must be quite a lot.
Must be way up in the millions.
But
I hope a little bit of that siphoned off, Judy. No?
No.
Do we have to have a tag day?
What does that mean?
A tag day to raise funds for Judy Garland?
Yeah, maybe a good idea with a tambourine or something.
Let's pause a moment.
He asked her, do we need to have a fundraiser for her? This is someone who was very popular, very famous, but was broke. Broke, used, abused since she was a child. When Judy Garland, I believe, was at this stage in her life, she went to London to get work because she wasn't getting work in the United States anymore. The industry will chew you up and spit you back out. There is a documentary, a newer one, about Judy Garland, played by Renee Zellweger. It represents the last years of Judy Garland's life. So if you've seen the Judy Garland miniseries where it starts with her childhood, this is a different take. It's the end portion of her life. And what was interesting about that particular documentary is that when I looked at, did Liza Minnelli support this? I was just curious to see. It turns out that Liza Minnelli did not support it. Liza Minnelli was Judy Garland's daughter. Liza Minnelli wished Renee Zellweger good luck, but she didn't support this documentary about her mom. Something to think about. When you watch The Wizard of Oz, you need to know that Judy Garland was starved for that role. You need to know that oftentimes they prevented her from eating, not just gave her a strict diet, but took food away from her. On her birthday, she took a photo in front of birthday cake that they wouldn't allow her to eat. You need to know that when she put on that Dorothy costume, they actually bound her body, like they tried to tape down her boobs to make her appear to be younger than she was. Now, I don't know about the other women, but I'm not, I ain't trying to tape the tatas, okay? I think we all know that's not going to be comfortable. But a lot went into this. And I think oftentimes when we watch movies and we see these shows, we don't know what went into making that movie. Many people don't know that Judy Garland also said that she was sexually harassed by the actors that played the Munchkins on The Wizard of Oz. Again, she was a child. Nobody said anything. Nobody came to her defense. Who sits around and allows this to happen? And then you have the devil himself, the one who owns you, Louis Mayer, also fondling you, and you're a child. And people wonder why. They wonder why Judy Garland ended up the way that she did at the end of her life. People need to be very protective over their children in the entertainment industry. It sounds like Judy Garland's mom was not. But this has been going on for a long time. Okay, let's go to some of the comments, ladies and gentlemen. Then we got to get into the Shannon Sharpe thing. Here we go. Angelique says, yeah, just because they're little don't mean they're not grown ass men. Exactly. Exactly. Let's go here. Thank you, Focus. A cigarette a day keeps the doctor away. Thank you, Dedication. This is why Britney Spears did what she did. Yep, it's all starting to make more sense now, isn't it? Yep, now we look back at these things and we're like, oh boy. Nightwolf said, just like Justin Bieber mom trusted Usher with her son. Skylar, this shit has been a problem since Hollywood first started. Sophia, those disgusting munchkins should have gone to jail. Casey says trauma adds age. Yes, it does. And Nightwolf says Corey Haim mysteriously died, which makes no sense. Yeah, that one was, I don't know. That was a weird situation. Weird situation. Pay attention, guys, when you see people act out like this all of a sudden as they get older. Pay attention to that. Ask yourself, were they a child star? Okay. We got to get to this story. If you haven't done so, folks, smash the like button. Thank you. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share, just like a Care Bear. Oh, buddy. Buddy. Sports commentator and host of Club Shay Shay, Shannon Sharpe, is not having a good week. It has been reported that a former significant other, someone he had a consensual relationship with, is now suing him for $50 million. She is alleging that Shannon Sharpe sexually assaulted her, excuse me, in October of 2024 and January of 2025. It's not looking good for Shannon, but there are two sides to the story. And I don't know what you've heard anywhere else, but tonight you're going to hear both sides. Let's get started with this one. This image here, one second. Sorry, I had to cough. This image here, this is Tony Busby. This is the lawyer who is representing the accuser. The woman that is accusing Shannon Sharpe is represented by the same lawyer that represented some of the accusers in the Diddy case and the one accuser in the Jay-Z case, which turned out to be false. There's two sides to the story, folks, regardless of if you think your team Shannon, if you think your team the lady, the woman, if you're on her side or whatever, there are two sides to the story. And tonight you're going to hear two sides, especially since new information was released today. Let's get into it. We're going to start off with law and crime, and then we're going to move forward.
This just in, the Texas attorney who targeted Sean Diddy Combs with dozens of civil lawsuits on behalf of John and Jane Does allegedly victimized by the music mogul has a new target in his sights. NFL legend Shannon Sharpe. A brand new lawsuit was just filed in Nevada claiming Sharpe was manipulative and abusive and eventually sexually assaulted a Jane Doe, with the latest claims allegedly happening as recently as January. We got our hands on the filing, and we're going to break down everything you need to know. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Tony Busby's back. The lawyer who went after Sean Combs, Jay-Z, we'll talk about that. Well, he is still swinging at high-profile men that he claims are abusers. This time, he's calling out Shannon Sharpe, the 56-year-old NFL superstar turned podcaster and commentator. Brand new lawsuit filed against Shannon Sharpe. We got a copy of it right here. It was filed out in Nevada. We're going to go over it. But
we're going to pause here. So Shannon Sharpe, my dad remembers him as a football, like some of us remember him as a football player, right? So he was a great football player. Some people know him because he co-hosted Undisputed with Skip Bayless, sports commentary show. And then there are newer people to Shannon Sharpe who know him because of the podcast Club Shay Shay, which turned out to be a huge hit. That is the podcast that had that viral interview of Cat Williams, where he said all lies will be exposed. So people may know him for different things. That is one of the questions that's on the poll, where people are asking, like, who is Shannon Sharpe? This is who he is. So let's continue on.
Shannon Sharpe, in case you don't know who he is, he played 14 seasons in the NFL with the Denver Broncos, the Baltimore Ravens. He was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2011. After he retired, he spent time as a sports commentator and analyst. You might remember that he co-hosted Skip and Shannon Undisputed with Skip Bayless from 2016 to 2023. Bayless and his then employer, by the way, Fox Sports, they faced their own accusations of sexual misconduct in a separate filing from earlier this year. We covered it here on Sidebar as well. Now, Sharpe is part of the sports podcast space. He hosts two shows, Club Shay Shay and Nightcap. In fact, you remember his interview with comedian Cat Williams in January 2024 on Club Shay Shay? That helped spark, I should say, a renewed interest in Sean Diddy Combs and his alleged bad behavior at his infamous parties. Got a lot of people talking.
Now, I've had to turn down $50 million 4 times. 4 times. Just to protect my integrity and that I was telling you about. Right. Because P. Diddy be wanting the body. And you got to tell him no. You got to tell him no. I did. I did.
But now it's Shannon Sharpe who's in the spotlight for his own accusations of abuse. Because on Monday morning, Texas attorney Tony Busby announced on his Instagram that he'd filed a $50 million lawsuit in Nevada court against Sharpe. On Instagram, he wrote in part, "I'm extremely proud to represent Jane Doe. It takes a great deal of courage to stand up against those with power, fame, and money. I look forward to pressing this case in court." So we're going to go over this, but I want to first bring in John Clune, civil attorney who litigates on behalf of survivors of sexual abuse and sexual assault. John, so good to have you. And again, this is kind of breaking news. I didn't have an opportunity to fully go through this lawsuit, so you and I are going to break this down in basically real time. When we saw this early this morning, it was a shock to us. What was your initial reaction?
My initial reaction was the timing of it, to be honest. Before I read the lawsuit, just the timing of it for it to be filed, on Easter Sunday, that struck me as an unusual move. But then as I went through the lawsuit, the allegations are pretty disturbing. We don't know if they're true or not, but what's written in the complaint is pretty terrible stuff.
It is pretty terrible stuff. I've seen a number of things being passed around online, some things that are false. One thing I do want to go ahead and debunk, there is a picture of Shannon Sharpe putting his arm around another woman, and people were trying to pass that picture off as either a coworker or something through ESPN, or a woman that he dated. That woman was his daughter. So there's a number of things that are going around out there that aren't really true. So I'm glad that I waited to cover the story today. I know it broke yesterday, but we got to get more information. Now, it was actually TMZ were the ones that I saw that first reported this story. And we're going to get into some of the updates that they have as well.
John, I have to say, to go after Shannon Sharpe, if you're Tony Busby, after what happened, what just happened with Jay-Z. Remember, he filed that lawsuit on behalf of a Jane Doe, a woman who claimed that she was 13 years old back in 2000 and was sexually assaulted by Jay-Z. That lawsuit was dropped, and it came after serious questions of her story and credibility surfaced, both by reporting by NBC News and evidence that was presented by Jay-Z's side. Jay-Z ended up suing this woman, suing Tony Busby as well. So now to go after Shannon Sharpe, another high-profile figure, does that tell you that he feels he has the evidence in this case?
That's the part there that I was saying. The last person that he just represented with this particular high profile, similar sexual assault accusation, it turned out to be false.
Well, Mr. Busby is a pretty bold mover in this space. I mean, he seems to not be, shy about his decision making. So it could mean that he's got the goods in this particular case, or it could just be, kind of par for the course. And this is how he, handles his high profile cases.
But and me and
we'll pause it there. We're going to get into more information about this. Again, I want you to keep in your mind, what really matters the most, right? So let's get into a little bit more of the details here, ladies and gentlemen. Shannon Sharpe accused of sexual assault, battery, and a $50 million civil lawsuit. Again, there's Shannon Sharpe there. It goes on to say that he is facing a lawsuit accused of sexual assault and battery and engaging in the intentional infliction of emotional distress. The lawsuit was filed Sunday in Clark County, Nevada, and obtained by USA Today Sports. The plaintiff, listed under the alias Jane Doe, said she was in a relationship with Shannon Sharpe for nearly 2 years, and it began as a rocky, consensual relationship. Here's the kicker, folks. We got to get to the age. The woman who is seeking $50 million in damages said she met Sharpe at a LA gym in 2023 when she was 19. I'm seeing different numbers here. Different outlets say 20, 22, 19. Anyway, you get the picture here. And alleges in the lawsuit that Sharpe, who is currently 56 years old, sexually assaulted her twice. Once in October of 2024 and again in January of 2025. Let me go ahead and pause right there and let's address the age. Now, 19 is not underage, but one of the points I think that people have been making is, why is a guy in his 50s trying to date or have a relationship with a girl that's 19, 20 something years old, right? And more so someone who is famous. You're famous, right? So there's money to be had there, right? Again, not saying she's false, she's lying, not saying she's telling the truth, but this is something that people are pointing to. They're saying dude, why are you dating these young girls like this, who obviously there are certain people that are going to want to go out with you because of who you are and because of how much money that you have, especially some of the younger ones. So that is something that people pointed out. Stick with women that are more mature, whatever your own age. Mature older women can do it too. They can do it too, just to be honest. But some people feel, and Charlemagne said this earlier, I saw that he was like, why is he going after those younger women like that? Come on, just stay your ass at home and be around people your age. So that's one of the problems that some people do have. In a statement released on Monday, Sharpe's attorney, Lanny J. Davis, called the lawsuit a blatant and cynical attempt to shake down Mr. Sharpe for millions of dollars. It is filled with lies, distortions, and misrepresentations, and it will not succeed. We'll get into some of the text messages as well. The woman said that Sharpe became violent over the course of the relationship. Now, this is serious. She says that he threatened to kill her. during one incident and recorded their sexual encounters without her consent. So this is not, if this isn't true, that's not okay. That's serious. Like if you say someone threatened to kill you, and we have the audio, which I think she may be referring to, we'll play that audio and then I'll let you decide how you feel about that. But also keep in mind, we don't know if that's the full audio. We don't know if it has been edited or not. We really don't know. So keep that in mind. Also, why was he being recorded? Let's continue on. So again, there's Shannon Sharpe there. Sharpe flew into fits of anger when the plaintiff noted his infidelity to their relationships or called him out about his extraneous activities. What had once been manipulation, control, and intimidation now became something far more dangerous and sinister. Sharpe even figured out how to get into Doe's apartment complex without her permission. Allegedly, I'm adding. Sharpe made it clear that what Doe wanted was of no moment, that Sharpe would get what he wanted when he wanted it. In October 2024, Shannon Sharpe violently sexually assaulted the plaintiff on 2 separate occasions in Las Vegas, ignoring her request to stop, allegedly. Jane Doe is represented by attorneys Tony Busby and Mika Nash. And we already went into who Tony Busby was. Shannon Sharpe is denying all allegations of coercion or misconduct, especially the gross lie of sexual assault, and will not submit to what he sees as an egregious attempt at blackmail. So let's get into this here. There is something you should know, right? Because people are calling out the timing of this. So again, we're going to show you both sides. It just so happens that on April 20th, it was announced NFL great HBCU legend Shannon Sharpe reportedly signing huge $100 million plus media deal. This was big news. It says here that he had received multiple offers since his current contract with the Volume podcast service expires. Club Shay Shay and Nightcap with Chad Johnson have dominated the sports and entertainment podcast space while garnering industry awards and honors. That Cat Williams episode on YouTube set records and presently has over 89 million views. So, this is something I think that's important for us to add to this conversation, which is that it's interesting that the accusations in the lawsuit is happening at the same time that this $100 million deal is also happening. Could be a coincidence. Don't know. But that's something that you need to know. So some people are asking, is this why she filed the lawsuit? People who believe Shannon Sharpe are saying, oh, she's just trying to come after this type of money. Now I have the audio that she submitted to TMZ. Again, this is the audio portion that she sent to TMZ. And I believe this is what she's referring to when she says that he threatened to kill her. Listen to this.
I don't know. Anything I say, you're just gonna like get mad at, and you're just gonna hang up on me. So I feel like
I'm not gonna hang up on you. You just wouldn't do it.
What does that even mean?
Nothing, Gabby. You want to be a dick to me now, so.
I don't want to be. Don't manipulate me.
I don't know that person. If you say that one more time, I'm gonna fucking choke the shit out of you when I see you.
So I don't know if everybody heard what he said there. We'll rewind it back a little bit with the captions.
Manipulate me.
I don't know that person. If you said that one more time, I'm gonna fucking choke the shit out of you when I see you.
So that's the audio that is making its way around. The I'm gonna choke the F out of you, etc. Now, again, we don't know if that's the full audio. We don't know if that audio has been edited or not. We really just don't know. All we know is this soundbite that we have right here, right? So keep that in mind. We do have a response from Shannon Sharpe. We're going to show that as well. Yeah. So that's the audio. And I'm just forewarning people, we got to be really careful nowadays. We just really do with audio and even some of these videos with AI and everything. You got to be careful. Now, he did issue a response. I was actually surprised he did this because usually with these types of situations, the lawyer would say, don't say anything publicly. But he did say something. So let's go ahead and bring this in.
To my family, friends, supporters, and colleagues, I want to speak to you directly and from the heart. This is a shakedown. I'm going to be open, transparent, and defend myself because this isn't right. This is all being orchestrated by Tony Busby, who has targeted Jay-Z. Tony Busby targets black men, and I believe he's going to release a 30-second clip of a sex tape that tries to make me look guilty and play into every stereotype you could possibly imagine. That video.
So did you hear what he just said? A 30-second clip of a sex tape. So that's what I'm saying. That audio that we heard, we don't know if that was a threat or if that was like role play. We just don't know. Again, like it was recorded. We do not know. We don't know. And I see everybody once again as a lawyer on social media. Everybody's a lawyer now. So this is his side of it. Let me go back just a little bit. Sorry.
Every stereotype you could possibly imagine. That video should actually be 10 minutes or so. Hey, Tony, instead of releasing your edit, put the whole video out. I don't have it, or I would myself. You know what happened, and you're trying to manipulate the media. The encounter in question took place during the day at her invitation, and now that appears to be a deliberate setup, coordinated by Gabby, also known as Carly on OnlyFans. Gabby and Tony Busby want $50 million. What they're getting is sued for defamation and trying to take me down. My career is all about real talk and honesty. I know my family and fans know exactly what this is about. And I'm going to be out there telling you whatever I need to say, just like I always do. I love all you guys. Thanks. To my family.
Do you guys think that it was a good idea for him to issue a public statement? Because like I said, typically with these situations, the lawyer will advise them not to say anything publicly just yet, right? Because it can be used against you, right? So he is obviously denying these allegations. And I think you need to see some of the text messages as well. There's more that goes into this. Some of the text messages that have surfaced between the two. Shannon Sharpe shares alleged text from sexual assault accuser, put a big black baby in me. Like when I read this, I was like, I cannot believe what I am reading right now with my own eyes. Statement by Lanny J. Davis, counsel to Shannon Sharpe. If there's any kids in your room right now, you might want to put them to bed. So I want you to put a dog collar around my neck and choke me with it while you're effing me. Gabriella Zuniga in a text message to Shannon Sharpe on October 7th, 2023. I know you missed this big juicy ass. $25,000 for each cheek. Gabriella Zuniga in a text message to Shannon Sharpe January 1st of 2025. Now, she is saying that one of the incidents she said happened in January of 2025. So keep that in mind as well. And also, guys, listen up. I told you about text messages and pictures and stuff coming from women. Be very, very careful. Some of these women will send this type of stuff and it's like a honeypot thing, or they're trying to trap you, or they're trying to be able to get some type of money or something out of you or whatever. And to the women, like, don't. If you wanted something like this private, as you see, these things don't stay private. It's not guaranteed to stay private. $25,000 for each cheek. This lawsuit, filed by Gabriela Zuniga and orchestrated by her attorney, Tony Busby, is a blatant and cynical attempt to shake down Mr. Sharpe for millions of dollars. It is filled with lies, distortions, and misrepresentations, and it will not succeed. In her effort to extract a large financial settlement, Ms. Zuniga presented Mr. Sharpe with a secretly recorded video of his consensual sexual encounter. So they are saying that that encounter was consensual. So it goes on to say here, Ms. Zuniga has refused to provide a copy of the full unedited version of the recording to Mr. Sharpe's legal team. To set the record straight, we are releasing several of Ms. Zuniga's own explicit text messages to Mr. Sharpe that clearly indicate the nature of their relationship was consensual and sexual in nature, and in many cases, initiated by her with specific and graphic requests. Contrary to the allegations she makes in the lawsuit, consensual sex continued until January 2nd, 2025, the day after she asked for $25,000 per cheek. There are other examples of texts from Ms. Zuniga. For example, oh boy, let's see here. Let me get this out of the way. Only if you put that baby gravy in me, then I can do whatever I want to me. Baby gravy in me, then I can do whatever I want to me. Text from Gabriela Zuniga to Shannon Sharpe, November 23rd, 2023. I want to put my tongue in your boop hole and then marry you, 2024. That's my daddy. Fuck, I want you to put a big black baby in me. That's August of 2024. Guys. Notori says, not baby gravy nasty. I'm like, what in the world? She said big black baby. This was, too much for Sabby. You better crave it because you're going to be stuck with it for life after you put a big black baby in me. What's the obsession with the big black baby? Like, what the hell? Oh, man, this is ridiculous. Oh, my gosh. Text from Gabriela. This is August 11th, 2024. These messages are just a sampling of a broader pattern of graphic sexual communications initiated by Ms. Zuniga. The evidence paints a clear picture. This was a consensual adult relationship that included role-playing, sexual language, and fantasy scenarios explicitly requested by Ms. Zuniga. The edited tape that Ms. Zuniga secretly taped and showed to Mr. Sharpe during her blackmail attempt tries to falsely portray, as a result of this editing and out of context from prior text messages, that the sexual activity was not consensual. Well. Again, it goes on to say he denies all allegations. Now let's move on to this part, because Brown Girl Grindin', who is a previous senior news producer at TMZ. I want you to hear what she added to this conversation. I spoke with Tony Busby and Shannon Sharpe's legal team, and I have some updates. First, I asked Tony Busby, attorney for the accuser, one, I asked if this case is happening because Shannon Sharpe is reportedly in talks for a $100 million podcast deal. He answered, These Shannon Sharpe allegations are not because of the recent 100 million podcast deal talks. Attorney Busby claims that he'd been in a preliminary mediation with Shannon Sharpe and his legal team since February of 2025. Tony Busby allegations that during this mediation, it was agreed that certain information was released in Shannon's statement would be retracted. So let me pause there for a second. So according to this, she's saying that lawyer Tony Busby has been in mediation talks with Shannon Sharpe about this since February, allegedly. Let's continue on here. It goes on to say Tony Busby calls the inclusion of Jane Doe's name and text. I think she needs to edit this. Jane Doe's name and text in Shannon Sharpe's statement an alleged attack on a young girl, and alleges the texts Shannon says she sent him were sent well before the acts being claimed in her lawsuit. So first of all, I get it that she asked Tony Busby, is this happening because Shannon Sharpe has that $100 million deal? But what lawyer is going to say, absolutely, my client is actually doing this because he has a $100 million deal on the table? Who's going to say that? Get out of here. 2, I asked him about the video blackmail Shannon Sharpe mentioned in his statement. Tony Busby answered that Shannon Sharpe's lawyers were allegedly shown the video in full during a mediation. Tony Busby alleges that Shannon Sharpe allegedly denied to view the video and offered a settlement in exchange that the victim denied. So it was $10 million. People were asking, what was that settlement? The alleged offer was $10 million. This is why I said I'm showing you both sides of the story. Because there's a lot of, back and forth here. But he's claiming that Shannon's lawyer saw the full tape. Second, I then spoke to Lanny Davis, attorney for Shannon Sharpe, in response to Tony Busby's claims. Shannon Sharpe's attorney denies that their team was ever extended the offer to see the video in full. He did confirm to me that only Shannon Sharpe's attorneys were shown the tape, but they allege they were shown an edited version of the video, which they confirmed was edited after explaining it to Shannon Sharpe. Shannon's attorney says they described it to Shannon, and Shannon was convinced it was edited. Shannon's attorneys allege they then were asking Mr. Busby for a copy of the tape to determine with a neutral expert whether it was edited, and he refused. Shannon Sharpe's attorneys also allege that Mr. Busby has misleadingly disclosed the discussions with the mediator. Ms. Zuniga, the woman accusing Shannon Sharpe, demanded tens of millions of dollars in return for her not going public. So the only way that she wasn't going to make this a public situation apparently was through money, right? And I guess she didn't get the money that she wanted or the offer that she wanted, so she went public. They're standing on claims from Shannon Sharpe's statement that the accuser secretly taped the sexual activity that morning and says they have reason to believe she significantly edited the tape. Again, he is denying all allegations. Class E said, I don't usually say this, but Unc should have made sure this got settled. Tony might have a win here. Interesting, folks. Interesting. Because what's telling about all this is that, number one, it does appear there was some type of meeting in February. Number two, it does appear that there was money that was demanded. That we do know for sure. What we don't know is if this is the full audio. We don't know that for certain. We don't know that it's edited. We don't know that it's not edited. We don't. But a lot of people are saying, like, Shannon, stay away from those younger girls. People are saying that type of thing. I told you guys at the beginning of 2025 that this was going to be the year of lawsuits. It's already April and there's been a number of lawsuits that I've covered so far. Like this is, I don't know. And this is a civil case. This is civil. She's asking for money, not criminal. If this was a recent, again, she said October 2024, January 2025. Why isn't there a criminal suit? Let's see what you guys thought. Let's pull up the poll. Poll. All right. Do you believe Shannon Sharpe is guilty? Okay, we have 1,410 votes. 9% of you say yes, it's obvious. 27% say no, it's a setup. 44% say I need more info. And 20% said, who is Shannon Sharpe? Hey, shout out to the who is Shannon Sharpe people. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you saying, just being honest. Keep it real. Keep it real. Keep it real, fam. But not looking too good for Shannon at this point in time. Like, it's just, wow. Wow. Chippa said, Sabby is psychic. You need a separate psychic channel. Let's go to some of the other comments here. Cloudness said, lame dudes always get extorted. Damn, Cloudness. Notori said, Monique tried to warn him to date women his age. I saw the text message. To me, it looks like a money grab. C. Curtin said, I know I could be very wrong, but this doesn't sound like Shannon. Thank you, Dolan. I believe him, and it was a good idea. They want you to stay silent, and your lawyer may be in on it. Oh, thank you, Ace Play. Shannon should bring on Dr. Umar Johnson. I can hear him say, Black queens forever, snow bunnies never. He would say that. Thank you, Juanita. From reading the articles, it sounds like she's trying to extort him. And Jason B, how hard was it to read those texts, Sabby? When I read this, when I read this earlier today, I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to read this on stream. I was like, I don't know. Oh my God, that was too much. Oh man. Okay. The mutual aid thing one more time. Can we go back to the first part? I just want to send the reminder before we head out. Oh my God. Just a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, mutual aid workshop is this Saturday at 11 a.m. ET. You will get the instructions and info from my newsletter. So sign up for my newsletter. It goes straight to your email account and you'll have a link there where you can sign up so I know who's coming. And you'll also get that Zoom link to participate in that. It will be 1 hour. 1 hour. Okay. Yeah. So again, the first one is this Saturday. So I know a number of you have been asking about that. So cool, ready and excited for that. Hey. Like who said? Oh my God. Oh my God. And the baby gravy, like what the? That's it for me tonight, guys. That's it for me. Oh, thank you, China. Did you hear about the birth decline recently? And Trump is trying to pay women $5,000 to have babies instead of maternity leave and free daycare. It's ridiculous, isn't it? You know how much daycare costs in the Boston area? Last time I checked, it's like $3,000 per child. It might be a little bit higher now. I checked that a couple years ago. That $5,000 isn't any, you know. What a mess. What a mess. I won't. Sabby won't eat gravy for the next year. No. All right, guys, that is it for me tonight. I'll be back live on Thursday. So see you guys then. Have a good night. Oh boy, keep up the fight.